Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 2 o'clock, time for the Oldham County Fiscal Court meeting. Happy to have all of you here today for our meeting on the 20th of February, 2024. Our bicentennial month, 200 years ago this month, Oldham County was formed by the Kentucky legislature out of Shelby, Jefferson, and Henry counties, and we're now celebrating our 200th anniversary. So if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you brought a cell phone with you today, please turn it to off or vibrate. Now, we're going to have a substitute clerk of court today. If that meets the approval of everybody here, I'd like to take a vote and ask what Tina Schaaf be our clerk for today. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Tina, will you please call the roll?
Magistrate Likens.
Oh, that's not good.
Here.
Magistrate Tice.
Here.
Magistrate Woosley.
Here.
Magistrate Jeffries.
Here.
Magistrate Helms.
Here.
Magistrate Hawkins.
Here.
Magistrate Dye.
Present.
Magistrate Logston.
Here.
Judge Vogel.
Here. Having all members of the fiscal court present, this meeting is now in session. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Are there any additions or subtractions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now I'll ask if there is a motion to approve our minutes from our prior meeting, which was on February 6, 2024.
So moved. Second. Second.
Are there any corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now, the first thing on the agenda today is public comment. That's the time when we allow anyone in the meeting who would like to address the fiscal court to be able to do so. We allow 4 minutes generally for public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to address the court? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment and go on to the first item on our agenda today, and we welcome our Oldham County Clerk, Amy Helvey, who is here with a check, I believe.
Always good when you bring money to court, right? Mm-hmm. So every year, once we close out our books, we turn over all of our excess fees. So that's anything that we have collected and then remitted back to the proper taxing districts and things of that nature. So we were down. Let me get my notebook. Of course, we are mainly a flow through. So what we collect, we turn right around and send it back out to taxing districts, whether it's delinquent property taxes and then the motor vehicle taxes and things of that nature. So again, we're pretty much a pass through on that. Our deeds, releases, and mortgages, which then in turn affects our document storage fees, those were down about $191,000 compared to last year, just because, a lot of things people aren't refinancing or buying and during that time. So that was down about $191,000. We did increase our passport income. Again, that's just a service that we provide to the citizens of Oldham County and people outside of Oldham County as well. It's a great service. We get a lot of compliments. It's pretty seamless process, easy for them to come in, no appointments necessary, and we had about $54,000 in revenue from that. Again, that's a service that we provide to the citizens that we're not required to. And another item is we saved about $25,000 also. We changed over in May our credit card processing system to, it was costing us about $12,000 a quarter to take in the processing fees and everything when we take credit cards. So we've now changed over to a new company and it costs us about $600 a quarter now. So trying to save as much as we can as we go. But with that all being said, we keep back around $1,000 if we find anything that comes through that just didn't get paid. And then once we close out the audit, we'll bring a final check back. But like I said, we keep back about $1,000. So our excess fees for 2023 were $594,626.76. So
All right, we'll take it. All right, thank you, Amy. All right, that's $500.
just real quick too, just a few election items while I've got the microphone. Our election plan was approved today at the State Board of Elections in Frankfurt. I went up there for that meeting. No questions were asked, so we're going to still use the same 9 voting locations that we used for the last election. We'll still have the 3 days of early voting and the 6-day excused in person here in our office downstairs. The last day to register to vote is April 22nd. So anyone that has not registered to vote, as long as you're 18 by the date of the general in November, you can register to vote in May. So you can register to vote then. And then again, we're always in need of poll workers. We anticipate probably the turnout in May to be about the same of what we had in last November, but we know that November of 24 for the general, for presidential, it's going to be extremely busy. So trying to get anybody that wants to be a poll worker, you can reach out to myself or anyone in our elections department. Just provide us your name, email address, and phone number. I'll get you on the distribution list. You are required to attend training. We have training is April 18th at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. in this courtroom. You are required to attend that training in order to be a poll worker. So if you have any friends, family, people you don't like, send them my way. I'll take anybody that I can get. Again, just trying to gear up for November of 2024.
And we do pay poll
We
workers.
do, yes. They get paid for training. They get $25 for training, and they get paid $150 per day. So if you work 3 days of early voting and election day, it's a decent paycheck. It is a long day. It is a long day. You cannot leave. It is a long day. I do provide a snack basket to everyone at the locations. So I try and bribe you with candy to come please work. So
If you go for the training for the primary, do you have to be retrained for the
Yes.
general?
Yes, you have to attend training each election. So there will be another training again in October for the November election.
The primary is what day?
May 21st.
And the general election is,
I'm not
November.
thinking that far ahead. Yeah, first Tuesday in November.
Okay, first Tuesday.
Yeah, I don't have my phone on me, otherwise I'll look it up.
All right,
Yeah.
don't mean to put you on the
Yeah.
spot there.
Yeah, no
All right.
worries.
Register to vote.
I had a quick question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Amy, do you know what there's a couple of bills I think that have been introduced to maybe increase the pay for poll workers. Do you know where those stand?
It's House Bill 580, I believe, is the House Bill number. I think it's going to go to the floor on Thursday. It's my understanding it's a $5 million bill that will be disseminated out to the counties. It's going to be more of what the county gets reimbursed per voter, and they're looking at, right now you get reimbursed based off of voting, how many voting precincts you have. And some counties have worked it where they have a population of 14,000 people, but they have 41 voting precincts.
Okay.
So, but then you have us that, have 57,000 registered voters, and we have 38, but we use voting centers, but you still get paid off precincts. So they're trying to change it to the number of registered voters. So we'll recoup more money for providing the service, because I think a lot of it hasn't been updated for quite a few years. So the percentages that you get are hopefully going to increase. And then with that, we would also be able to hopefully increase the election worker pay as well. Because I know I've had a couple of people that moved in from Jefferson County, and when I told them what our pay, because Jefferson County pays like $300 a day
Right.
versus our $150, and they're like, it's not worth my time.
Right.
I was like, but I bring a snack basket.
We're going to Frankfurt tomorrow to lobby our
Thank
folks
you.
up there, so we will certainly talk about that particular bill.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate the support very much so.
Magistrate Hawkins.
It appears as though November 5th.
November 5th.
the
Okay.
first
All right,
Sounds
November
great.
5th, all right.
But
I have it on my calendar, but I'm so
Yeah.
focused on May, so.
if one wants to register to vote, can they still come into the office in LaGrange, or is it better to register online?
It's better. It's easier to do it online,
Okay.
but they're more than welcome to come into our office. All 3 of our offices have voter registration cards.
Okay.
So they can fill out the card, and then it'll come to us through the interoffice mail, and our election staff here in LaGrange will input their information. But if you go to govote.ky.gov, then you can check your registration. If you're not sure how you're registered to vote or change any of your information, you can do it all online there, and then we get an electronic report daily, and then we update it in our system as well.
Thanks.
Magistrate Hounds.
How is the car registration system working now?
It is getting better every day. That's there are still bugs. Unfortunately, our wait times have decreased, which is a big plus. Where a typical renewal back in the day, I say back in the day, 2 months ago would take 5 minutes. Now, majority of our customers do have to either call or visit PBA. Because the system has blocks on it and won't allow us to do anything, even if it's not on a vehicle you're trying to renew. If it's a vehicle that you're associated with, it will not allow us to move forward. So it is getting better. Trailers are working, so we now can renew trailers. They're changing some of the language. I think there was a legislation or an update that was passed in January 1 of 2024 that said that you could only transfer the vehicle in the buyer's county, and it's always been in the buyer or the seller's county. So we've asked for that to be amended and updated. And then there's an issue with 10,000-pound plates as well, where it's almost basically double charging people for that because they changed the date. So when you come in and do it in March, it only renews it through May, through their birth month, rather than for a whole year. So there's an issue because it was always anything over 10,000 pounds. Now it's
Right.
10,000 pounds. So that's catching a lot of people. If you have a Suburban and it's in a business name, it doesn't have a weighted plate on it, but now they're saying you have to have a weighted plate because it's over 10,000 pounds. So yeah, there's a lot of intertwining of things, but they are receptive to all of our comments and stuff. They have turned our chats off, or they've stopped participating in our chats, and so they can get some of their work done. They say so.
The state stopped participating?
Yes, the Cavis team has, which is the team that implemented this new software. So hopefully, we can still email them, but they're not going to participate in the chats.
Measure die.
Yeah, Amy,
Yes, sir.
back to the election.
Uh-huh.
1 day of training pays 25,
Yes,
and
sir.
that's in the primary, and then if you want to work the general, that's 25.
And I also offer additional clerk training, like shows you how to set up the equipment, take down the equipment, check in voters. You get paid $25 for that. And I'm the teacher on that, so it's well worth the $25.
You can do that same day. In other words, you can make a $50 day instead of just a $25 day.
No, it's not done the same day. I do it, there's 6 sessions, there's 2 days. It'll be the week after training at the John Black Center, last about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And they get paid for that as well. But they have a sign-up sheet when they come for the training session.
Okay, now let's say they do the training and then don't show up. They still get paid for the training, right?
Just don't show up for election day?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. And how many days can they work on the election? 1 to 3? Is that correct? I mean,
I have seasoned workers that work all 4 days. They work 3 days of early voting and they work election day.
So if they went top of the line, they can make $450, right? All 4 days in the 2 sessions you're talking about.
Sounds like 600.
Yeah, 150 is 450, 450, 600, because if they work 4 days,
Oh, 600.
4 days, plus a day of training, so they can make $625.
Okay. Now, the other 2 questions.
And you will get a 1099 at the end of the year.
Well, of course. That's why they want to get under $600.
That's right.
There's no make a difference what party you're affiliated with, or does that even come into question?
It does not matter. I try and balance it, each voting center. I try and balance it as much as I can. Some people don't like to be moved, but we have to have as many equal DNRs or independents or others as we can to balance it out. But we are required to have the election judge at each location. There is one Democrat and one Republican. That's required at each voting center and on early voting. So, but I try and balance it as much as we can.
All right, last question. Is there a minimum education level?
No.
All right.
I have a range of 19, I think, to 92 is my age range.
What is the minimum age?
You have to be 18.
18.
Yeah, you have to be 18.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That covers.
Magistrate Woosley.
Yep.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about the snack basket? I'm talking.
I even brought the sheriff's deputies that come and sit, because we do have security on site. I made them a little snack bag and dropped it off at each location.
I don't want to skim over the fact that you're here today and turning over $600,000 back to the
That's
county.
right.
So I wanted to thank you and your folks for being such good stewards of tax dollars.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing Amy reminded me a little bit of the bicentennial, not because you're 200 years old. No, I think you've probably been here about 20% of the time Oldham County has been a county. But I want to hold this up. We have these bicentennial coins, commemorative coins, on sale in Amy's office. They're only $5. It's really a nice deal. It's got the county seal on the back and our bicentennial seal on the front. So if you'd like to get one, stop by Amy's office. There's a display down there, and we're actually losing 60 cents on every one of these, but that's okay. We hope we lose a bunch of money so everybody can have a bicentennial coin. They're really nice. We'll go on now with the next item on our agenda, and that is a bid opening. We have a big pile of dirt out on 393 next to the project known as the Animal Resource Building that we're building, and we have a bid to take that dirt and sell it and take it away. We don't necessarily we're not necessarily obligated to accept the bid, but we're taking bids, and I think we only received one. So let's go ahead and open that.
I just gave it
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, okay. This bid is for $1. County will not be accepting this bid. I'll tell you right now, we're not going to sell this for $1. So that's just,
Who's it
sorry.
from?
Pardon?
Who's
The
the
bid is from B.J. Chauhan, Chauhan. I'm not, pardon? Yeah, I'm not, disparaging the bid. I'm just saying it's not an adequate amount for what we have there.
So do we have to vote that down, don't we?
Pardon?
We have to vote that, say no?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I don't think
Just
we
not
do.
accept
I think we just, we're not going to accept the bid.
Wouldn't hurt.
Right. Mr. County Attorney, are we required to vote on this bid?
No. Why would we have to vote on it?
Scott, are you the county attorney?
We don't bring things back all the time.
Pardon me?
Yes.
You want us to
You
vote
need to
on
vote
it?
on it if you're going to reject the bid.
All right.
I move that we reject that one bid that we received. I don't have the gentleman's name, but
All right.
EJ.
VJ Chauhan.
Second.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that we not accept the bid. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Or is there anybody who wants to accept the bid? I shouldn't make that assumption. I felt like I heard everybody speak. All right, thank you. Now we'll go on to the next item on the agenda today, and that's our bills to be paid. And when you're ready, we'll accept a motion to pay the bills.
Make a motion, we pay the payables.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Under community business now, we have the second reading of the zoning map amendment ordinance number KOC 24-920-402 at 2107 South Highway 53 LaGrange. And this will be a public hearing. I'll explain the rules of that in just a moment. But first, we'll hear from Brian Fogel from the Planning Department.
Okay, thank you, Judge Vogel and Fiscal Court. Brian Fogel, Assistant Director, Oldham County Planning Development Services. So the agenda item that's before you all this afternoon is a recommendation from the Planning Commission for approval of a zoning map amendment at 2107 South Highway 53. request to change in zoning is from C1 to C2. Going to go through a little bit of the history of that and then what the Planning Commission's decision was. In terms of notification for today's public hearing before the fiscal court, the adjoining property owners were notified on January 31st. 2 zoning change signs were posted on the property because it's a lot that has frontage on 2 roads, being Zale Smith and Highway 53. On February 5th, a legal advertisement appeared in the Oldham Area newspaper on February 8th, and Tara in the judge's office posted it on the county's website on the 9th of February. In terms of the review history for this, and I'm going to kind of breeze through this quickly, but it's just to give you a sense of the steps that are required when someone files a zoning map amendment, whether it's this particular one or others. In February of last year, a pre-application conference was held with the applicants to detail our process for a change of zoning. They decided to proceed forward in the fall, and in October of this year, they had a neighborhood meeting at LaGrange City Hall, the James T. Beaumont Community Center meeting room, which is one of the steps that's a requirement when someone asks for a change of zoning in Oldham County. On November 15th, they appeared before the Oldham County Technical Review Committee for technical comments from agencies such as traffic, engineering, planning and development. On December 20th, the Planning Commission conducted their public hearing, which is what's in front of you guys today. The Planning Commission held this hearing on December 20th and made a recommendation that the zone change be approved, but it's only in the form of a recommendation. It's your all's decision whether or not to approve the zone change or not. They also recommended some binding elements that we'll go over. On January 23rd of this year, the county attorney's office reviewed the proposed ordinance, said that it was okay to appear before the fiscal court. On February 6th, we had a real brief introduction for a first reading to say, hey, we'd like to come back to you guys on February 20th, which is where we're at today, to have the actual second reading and public hearing in regards to this request. The location of the property is at the intersection of Zale Smith Road and South Highway 53. The Crystal Lake neighborhood is located right here. The intersection of Zale Smith and 53 is right here. It's this corner lot. The border's up next to O'Reilly's Auto Parts. LaGrange Kroger is across the street right there. Just a couple quick photos. This is the intersection of Zale Smith Road and Highway 53, looking back towards the interstate in downtown LaGrange. Looking south towards the Balladgeville community, so Freddy's and Tractor Supply would be located right here. Looking down Zale Smith Road towards the Crystal Lake neighborhood, which lies right over here. And then looking from the Crystal Lake neighborhood back up towards the site, here's the O'Reilly's Auto Part, a back entrance right here. And the proposed change of zoning is for this property that lies right here. The property is highlighted in red on this map. So it's at the intersection of Zale Smith Road and Highway 53 next to the O'Reilly's Auto Parts. And the zoning in the area is currently C1. So the same parcels highlighted in red here, and then you'll see this shade of pink here that all this property that's between Highway 53 and the residentially zoned areas of Crystal Lake is currently zoned C1. And then across the street where the LaGrange Kroger's at and then the Tractor Supply, you've got some C3 zoning. So anything that's yellow is currently zoned residential. The light pink would be the C1, which is what they're asking for a change of zoning from. And the zoning that they're requesting is C2. The reason that they're asking for the change of zoning in the C1 zoning district, vehicle repair businesses are not a permitted use, but they are permitted use in the C2 zoning district. This is an image from our zoning ordinance showing the permitted uses in C1. You can see here under the commercial uses in the C1, which is the present zoning of the property, vehicle repair businesses are not a permitted use. The zoning that they're requesting, the C2, under the commercial permitted uses and highlighted in yellow here, vehicle repair, including service stations. So on December 20th, the Planning Commission conducted a hearing on this and made a recommendation on a vote of 7-6 to forward this to the fiscal court with a recommendation of approval. In addition to the recommendation for approval of the zone change, the Planning Commission also looked at the development plan and put some binding elements on the property. So if you all were to choose to uphold the Planning Commission's recommendation of approval, changing the zoning on the property, then these binding elements would also be under your all's consideration. The first of those binding elements is that the development plan that was presented to the Planning Commission on December 20th is what's to be constructed on the property, that there would be no changes to that development plan without review by the Planning Commission and the Engineer's Office, that the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and local ordinances at the time of construction plan approval, that the applicant must provide a written access agreement with the adjoining property at O'Reilly's because they're proposing to connect the two common parking lots. And then fifth, that prior to presenting before you all today, the applicant needs to explain in more detail what a Hydro International downstream defender or similar device that would be located on the property to deal with stormwater issues, and that must be done in coordination with the county engineer's office. So in summary, the ordinance that's before you all this afternoon is a request to change zoning from C1 to C2, which would allow the establishment of a vehicle repair business. With that, because there are references to stormwater and there may be other engineering questions that come up, I'd like to pass the baton to Jim Silliman, county engineer, and we'll be here to answer any questions or concerns that you guys may have.
Yes, thank you. Jim Silliman, County Engineer, 100 West Jefferson Street. And as the County Engineer and Stormwater Coordinator, two primary focuses of our review of proposed development are, of course, traffic impacts and stormwater and pollution. It was noted during the Technical Review Committee and Planning Commission hearings that this site, as proposed, is a relatively low peak hour trip generator of traffic. And as such, combined with future potential projects on Kentucky Highway 53, no roadway improvements were required. We observed, based on the ITE, or Institute of Transportation Engineers documentation, that this site would generate approximately 12 peak hour trips. Oldham County subdivision regulations require a traffic assessment at 20, and consistent with KYTC regulations, a traffic impact study at 100. Again, we saw this one would generate about 12. With regard to stormwater and pollution, of course, as Brian mentioned in the binding elements, the applicant will be required to abide by all or obtain any local, state, and federal permits, in addition to complying with our local stormwater management ordinance. And the Hydro International downstream defender water quality unit that was mentioned would be placed in order to meet the water quality requirements of our ordinance. The remaining, I think, question during that Planning Commission hearing was with regard to antifreeze and some other chemicals that might not be addressed by the Hydro International downstream defender or equivalent. And the applicant has provided information to us on on the way they're going to address that. I'll let them detail that better in their presentation.
All right, are you finished, Ryan, with the staff report?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any
Can I ask one question
Yes,
before we move
sure, yes,
As I was reading through, as I was reading through the docket on this, we didn't have the red outline picture. So if you could go back to that 1 second for me. Oh. And what my question was, is I was untotally sure of what you referred to as the front of the building and the side and the back of the building. So if you could take that and show us where the connectivity with O'Reilly's is and how that will drop out on the other road. If you could, or is that
Yeah.
Show me where the front and the back and everything is.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question generally. The applicants, I suspect, are interested in sharing that information with you guys and may have graphics that will fulfill the saying that a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I'm going to show you here on this picture that the front of the building would be here along Zale Smith. It would not have any windows or openings or entrances on Zale Smith, maybe with the exception of an emergency entrance. The other front of the building, because it is on a corner lot, would be here where their office would be. And I think their pictures that they would put in their presentation will tell a better story. They're proposing to have a parking lot entrance at approximately here, with their parking here, and then a connection right here with this stub that's here on the O'Reilly's parking lot.
On what I'll refer to the back of their parking lot. And
Okay.
you all explain all of that. And then where will the overhead doors be?
The overhead doors would be oriented towards the internal part of their lot, so the overhead doors would not face on a public right-of-way. The overhead doors would not face on Zale Smith Road. The overhead doors would not face on Highway 53.
So what you're referring to as the front of the building is off of Zale Smith Lane, which is actually where the overhead doors are also.
There will be no overhead doors on Zale Smith Lane. It would be the back of the building, but their proposal is not the typical back of the building, and I would let them address that.
Okay.
But
Well,
all the
you
overhead-
promise it'll clear up later?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if it doesn't, we'll revisit
I'll
it
keep
and make
asking
sure your
questions
question
then.
gets answered.
Okay.
But all the overhead doors on the development plan that they presented to the Planning Commission are not oriented towards Zale Smith Road nor Highway 53. They're all oriented towards their parking lot in O'Reilly's Auto Parts.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions for the staff before the applicant makes its presentation?
Judge, I have one. This is probably for Jim, but
Go ahead.
the fifth binding element said that they were presenting the Hydro International Downstream Defender before the presentation today to your office. So has that been done? Is that coordinated
That's
through your
correct.
office? So, okay.
Yes.
I know you mentioned it, but you didn't really say that they had coordinated it through your
Right,
office.
so again, they did send that with an explanation of how they'd like to address the additional antifreeze and others, and I'd just like them to explain it
Okay.
in their words. But it was sent to us ahead of this meeting as detailed.
Okay, thank you.
Judge,
Measure die.
yeah, I didn't have a question, but one just popped up. On the binding elements, it says here that number 4, applicant must provide a written access and egress agreement with O'Reilly's at the construction plan submitted. Are they going, the new people are going to have to rely on O'Reilly's in some way, shape, or form permanently, or just during this construction?
Permanently. It would be
Okay.
a part of the operation.
All right, now, the only problem I've got with this is with the word O'Reilly's. What if O'Reilly's closes up the day after they open?
That's a valid technicality. The conversation that took place at the Planning Commission would be reflected, would be the adjacent property. And we probably could have placed that more elegantly than just saying O'Reilly's, in the eventuality that O'Reilly's would close between now, and this is assuming they get approved, and the time that they would file construction plans later this year.
The easement would be recorded, so it would transfer with the land.
Okay, now, that's the second half of my point here. Let's just say that O'Reilly's closed up for whatever reason, and then and the building was owned by some investment corporation, or let's say they went bust, and then turns over to a bank for foreclosure. Doesn't all these easements and all these documents on this piece of paper go away when it goes to a?
No.
It doesn't? Not like a CCR?
No.
No, again, they carry with the land, and unless they're released, then they would have to go through a process to get approval for release. They are in perpetuity.
It's deeded.
Okay.
It's going to be a deeded right away.
I see it broke all the time.
All right, thank you, staff members. We'll proceed now. The way this is going to work is we'll have a presentation by the applicant, then Those who are here may be here to oppose the application will have an opportunity to speak, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to rebuttal those, and then there will be a rebuttal of the rebuttal if necessary before final statements are made. So we'll proceed now with the applicant, and I know who you are, but I'll ask you for the record to state your name and address, please.
John Talbot, Barton Warper Talbot Roberts, 1000 North Hurstbourne Parkway, Louisville, Kentucky, 40223.
Right, go ahead, Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, fellow members of the commission. Of the fiscal court. I want to introduce the folks from our team that are here today. We have Billy Green. I think he flew from Houston, from Christian Brothers attending today. And we also have Ashley Zeibel. She's our civil engineer who's worked on these plans. She's with Progressive AE. And she also has some background in environmental matters. So she'll probably be testifying and able to answer some of your old questions about that. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about this company, Christian Brothers. It's not just a name. They actually are a company that lives by those types of ideals. Let me give you one example. They kind of like Chick-fil-A. They are not open on Sundays ever. And for the most part, they won't even be open on Saturdays or Sundays. And if you're in the car repair business, you are giving up a lot of potential profits to not do that. The reason they don't want to be open those days is because they consider themselves very much a family-oriented company, and they want their employees to be able to spend time with their families on the weekends. The only exception to the Saturday work would be on the first 180 days, trying to establish themselves as a business. I think from that standpoint, it's an excellent business and will fit very well in the fabric and culture of Oldham County. Additionally, they are a very good employer in terms of pay and wages. You could have, this lot is a little bit oddly shaped, and it's constrained by a couple roads. We've got Zale Smith and also Highway 53. So there's not a lot that you can do with it. You couldn't put a lot of businesses there. And when I get to some of your magistrate's ice, I'll have pictures to show you how we formatted the lot to make sure we can fit within that lot. But it's not easy, and it doesn't really lend itself to a lot of uses. So the question is, what would be a good use to put there? We think this use for a car repair place will work very well, and we're able to fit ourselves on that piece of property. But we're going to have 8 to 10 employees that are mechanics, and that may not be the correct word. There's probably a more technical word. Technicians, thank you. And the average pay, the lowest pay will be $55,000 with full benefits, and some of those employees will be making over $100,000. So this is an excellent type of employer for the county. More importantly, it's an excellent type of employer for the type of jobs that we need for people to raise families in Oldham County. This is also a perfect site for the traffic. With Highway 53, there's lots of road improvements that are coming down the pike for that road in the next few years. Our traffic generation is de minimis compared to just about any other use you could have. I think the only use that would have less traffic might be a senior living center, and that is not an exaggeration at all. Our traffic per day would be 83 cars, and in the peak hour, we only have 7. So not only is Highway 53 a busy corridor that you want to be careful with the amount of traffic that you're adding to it until that occurs, we're also at that intersection with Zale Smith Road. So traffic is very much of a concern, and I think we hit high marks on that type of site, and we'll get to that in a little bit more detail as we go on. At the Planning Commission hearing, probably the biggest concern was environmental issues. They're the good folks at Crystal Lake, and they have a beautiful area, beautiful homes, and a very nice lake to protect. And they're concerned about that. The thing is, we're concerned about it too. This is not a car transmission or car repair shop from 1975. We're talking about 2024 that this is going to be built. It is going to have to comply with all state, all local, and all federal environmental regulations that you would have. And those regulations are very extreme and specific to cater to make sure that the types of things that they're concerned about, we don't have those types of issues. In addition to that, we've also supplied some evidence about the training that we're going to go through, and hopefully you'll have had a chance to review that. There's a 35-page packet that was submitted into evidence. I think we sent that to Mr. Sullivan. And Solomon, and hopefully that made its way to you all, but it covers all of the main issues that you'd want to make sure employees are highly trained on. In addition to that, at the hearing, to address some of the concerns of those residents, we agreed to put in this defender, and I'll have Ashley come up and speak in detail about that. But we are not looking at those questions lightly. They're very important, but the point is they are being handled, and they're going to be handled very well. And this is not just hypothetical or speculative. There's already a Christian Brothers location in Crestwood, and we have pictures from that very site. It is very well maintained. All of the work is done in bays, and I got to be honest with you, and see the pictures, they're about as clean, they're cleaner than most people's kitchen floors. Really immaculate. They take that stuff very, very seriously. Some of the thoughts from the homeowners were like, well, what if there's a crashed car that's leaking fluids? Keep in mind, we do not do work for body type work. They don't do body shop repairs. They do maintenance and warranty type work. They'll do brakes, change oils, they do those types of things. And they follow all the EPA regulations, state and local, to make sure they don't have any issues with that. So I wanted to give a little bit of an overview on those points, and I'll cover them a little bit more as we go down. I think Brian already mentioned the fact that we had our neighborhood meeting. We also had a big outreach to the Crystal Lake folks. We invited them to come look at the site, take them on a tour of the site we had. They didn't take us up on that. I don't know why, but we tried to be very transparent and proactive with making sure they could see exactly what we were doing. This is the zoning, and Brian's slide showed a little bit of this. This is a little bit more of an expanded out version. Obviously, you've got between the blue and the purple, that's where Highway 53 is. And between that, yes, sir.
Oh, it's now on our monitor. It wasn't when I first raised my hand.
Little delay.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. So what you're looking at the top of the screen, the CO1, that's Crystal Lake and their subdivision. Between that, you've got the yellow R2, which is some residences. And then you have the dark blue, which is C1. Then you have Highway 53. And then on the other side of the street, you have a lot of C3. So what we're asking to be done is to rezone this to C2. What is evident is this entire area is very much a commercial area. On one side of the street, you already have C1. On the other side, you already have mainly C3. We're asking to right in between those two at C2. So not a big jump in terms of what we're proposing. This shows all the businesses. I think you are going to be very familiar with this. But you've got Walmart, you've got Wendy's, you've got restaurants, hotels, hospitals, but you also have things like Ken Towery's Auto Shop. You can see that, I believe, on this one. That's just a little bit, a few doors down from where we are. And you have O'Reilly's Auto Parts, which is immediately next door. So you already have similar uses that are very much in the vicinity of where we are. This is the site now. It's not, this makes it look like it's a big U-turn. That's just the way the camera is. It's really a corner of Zale Smith Road and Highway 53. That's looking down Zale Smith Road to the east. That's looking towards Highway 53 on Zale Smith Road. Our site is to the right. And in this picture, you can see the O'Reilly's Auto Parts building. Again, that's where we would have the access for some fluid for cars to travel back and forth. Our main entrance will be on Zale Smith Road on this street here. And then again, another site of Highway 53 looking south. Our site is on the left, and you can see Zale Smith Road a little bit up, a little bit forward in that picture. Here is looking down Highway 53 the other direction. Again, our site is on the right, and Zale Smith Road is on the right. All right, so Magistrate Tice, this is the picture that I wanted to show you, and also Magistrate Dye. This shows our location in terms of where our access would be with the O'Reilly Auto Parts, and also where our entrance is. So let me give you a little bit of a description here. This white rectangular thing, this is where our building is. The back of the building is what is facing Zale Smith Road. We pushed that there for a couple reasons. One, because there's not a lot of room to put it anyplace, but it also will act as a barrier from some of the residences going down Zale Smith Road, and it puts all of our activity kind of facing towards more of the commercial corridor. Our entrance here, this is a tough site to develop in terms of entrances. If you put an entrance on Highway 53, you're very close to that intersection, which is something that is usually discouraged, and I'm not even certain it would be allowed, but it's really not an ideal place to put it because it would be too close to that intersection. So instead, we put our site and our entrance a little bit further down Zale Smith Road. And this is where our traffic becomes really important. Again, only 7 vehicles at the peak hour traffic times. That is all we'll be adding to the traffic. And when you push our entrance down onto that less used Zale Smith Road, it's really an ideal place to put it. In addition to that, we would have access to the O'Reilly Auto Parts here, and that's where the cars could go back and forth between those two facilities. Now, Magistrate Dye, you were asking about the access easement. We have had discussions with them. So far, they've been completely open to it. I mean, if there's increased access, it's a benefit to them as well as to us, so it goes both ways. In terms of what we would do, it would be a formal document called an access easement. We would file that of record, have it signed by all the parties, and it would run with the land. It would burden the O'Reilly Auto Parts land. So anybody that bought that land, if they tried to redevelop that property or do whatever they wanted to do, they would still have to permit us to have access to that site and flowing through it. We would make sure that would be something that's preserved, and it would apply to all successors in the sign, so that would be covered. I guess the question is, well, what if they go out of business tomorrow and won't give you an easement? Well, if that's the case, we're going to be coming back with a new development plan and having to get approved. The plan you do that's approved for this site would no longer be valid. We wouldn't be able to do it. So we would have to come back for another hearing. It would be something we would have to work out with the Planning Commission. I really don't think that there's really much of a chance of that happening. And again, all of our discussions with them have been very positive on that subject. This shows our site a little bit more clearly, but I wanted to show one where it's actually sitting on the property. Again, on the bottom, that's Zale Smith Road, and on the left, that's Kentucky Highway 53. We have 51 parking spaces on this site. One thing that we had noticed from the site at Crestwood is that they only have about 30 parking spots, and it really wasn't enough. And so they wanted to make sure they got enough parking spaces so there was not a risk of any overflow parking. And so with this site, the way they've got it designed, we would have adequate parking for all of that. There were also some questions that came up at the Planning Commission. Well, if you had a semi, would they be able to turn around? The largest truck that we would have is probably like a FedEx box truck. We would have tow trucks perhaps, but we wouldn't have anything larger than that. So really, in terms of the site, we want it to be able to flow, and it's designed to be able to accommodate the type of traffic that we expect to have. This shows our landscape plan, again, in terms of the layout of the building. The brick-colored rectangle, that's where our building is. The bay doors would all face towards the parking lot, and it would act as a buffer, again, from Zale Smith Road, protecting the residents and the people that live down that way. It's not only going to block sights, but also would block sound, so it would be good for that. So it's a really good design in terms of that. It would push all of our activity towards the commercial sector of this area. This is a dumpster enclosure detail. I won't spend much time on that, but we do have that covered. And here's our monument sign. Very attractive, but not an overly flashy sign, but it's attractive and would fit in well with the area. And we do have some colored up renderings, but this shows the mounted sign detail, Christian Brothers, and these would all be facing, what is my direction? It would be facing where we are in LaGrange. I think that's north. East. I think that's north. Is that north? Yeah, so that would be facing north, again, away from Zale Smith Road. And here's our color renderings. The top one is the one that's facing the parking lot with our bay doors. The second one is the one that's going to be facing Zale Smith Road. And they didn't want to do just a bland, boring, or perhaps even an ugly exterior. They wanted to make sure there was some design elements to that, so it'll still look very nice as you drive up Zale Smith Road. And then you also have the side views as well. These were some of the points we made at the Planning Commission hearing. We will use an EPA spill prevention system and control procedures to capture any leaking fluids. And let me elaborate on that. Each bay will have its own drain, and there's also a drain that goes the entire length of the building to capture any fluids that might leak out, and those drains are connected to the oil capture system, the oil water capture system, to make sure we don't have any issues with that. Oops. All service bay doors will have that. I guess I mentioned that. The entire length of the building will have a floor drain. The oil water separator will be on a continuous maintenance program to make sure that doesn't come overloaded. And we'll also have no long-term storage of vehicles on the site. In terms of how long, I think one of the questions asked at the Planning Commission, well, how long could a car have to sit there? If someone dropped a car off on the weekend, It could sit there over the weekend, but that's usually not a tremendous issue on what happens. And again, we're not having cars that have been in car accidents or things of that nature. It would be like perhaps a husband and wife where they drive up, leave one car up to get the work done Monday morning, and then they drive the other ones home. A situation like that, maybe to do the brakes or to have an alignment or to change the oil. Those would be the types of things that you might have. So the odds of anything leaking would be very remote, and we have an expert's report that I'll get to that talks about the remoteness of that type of possibility. Even if you did have some leaking, from the expert's report, they talk about in detail about how limited that would probably be and how easy it would be to clean up. And we will make sure that we have somebody when they come in on Monday to check and make sure that they do not have any cars leaking. And if they do, they immediately take care to clean any type of mess that might do. But it's not a situation where you just have a flow of water like an open spigot pouring out. You would never have that type of situation. This is my slide on the downstream defender. I would like to ask Ashley to come up and talk about this. This is the detail that I'm going to ask her to speak about. And Ashley, the next one is the pollution prevention course, and then the environmental review report if you wanted to comment on any of those as well. If you don't, I'll cover those too.
My name is Ashley Zabel. My address is 18114 Mile Road in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 49525.
Pardon? All right. Would you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, go ahead.
So as John has previously stated, I'm the civil engineer for this project. I also have experience in environmental engineering, including generating stormwater pollution prevention plans for auto service centers and auto manufacturing companies. The downstream defender, which is shown on the monitor, is one of the water quality units that's offered by Hydro International. They're a very reputable company in water quality units. In addition to what is already required by Oldham County standards for capturing sediments and potential debris, the downstream defender, they also have a couple other versions called First Defense and the ADS Barracuda. They have an oil water separator component as well. It's pretty simple because that helps to promote the maintenance and functionality of it. Oil floats. So it introduces an element that keeps the oil on top, allows the water to pass below the oil capture level, and then it allows the sediment and the debris to settle before sending the water to the detention basin. The detention basin, which also has a lot of vegetative grasses and a low gentle slope and an outlet control structure, then promotes further settling and absorption by that vegetation before it's released at an allowable discharge rate off-site. One of the items that Jim Silliman had mentioned and that has come across, this does not capture antifreeze. Antifreeze is water soluble. However, what John Talbot had mentioned as well, for the likelihood of antifreeze leaking, it's very minuscule. It's also something that doesn't leak in a very large quantity. If it does, the employees can go and inspect the area and pick it up with spill mats right away, which they have on the site. In order for it to potentially leave the site, it would have to be a torrential downpour when the car is dropped off. It would have to be actively leaking antifreeze. We'd have to be getting inches of rain so that it could then go into the catch basin, go through the downstream defender, go past the outlet control structure, at which point it's going to be diluting itself to parts per billion. The most common antifreeze is propylene glycol, which does naturally break down over time. It does naturally break down amidst vegetation and grasses, and that's part of why our basin is designed the way it is.
Thank you, Ashley. And the downstream defender that she just described, this is what we agreed to do in the binding elements at the Planning Commission hearing upon listening to some of the issues that the residents had raised. We wanted to make sure we covered everything that we could, and this captures almost everything with the one issue about the antifreeze. It's the one thing, because it's water soluble, we couldn't cover for. And so as a result of that, we wanted to give you some other information about this. This is the first page of the 35-page instruction manual on what we do in terms of training employees if you have these types of issues. That list that's there, it says an introduction of what to do with solvents, wastewater, floor drains, oil and similar fluids, absorbents and spills is specifically addressed, antifreeze specifically addressed, batteries, refrigerant, tires, other sources, even asbestos. So that's the level of detail that Christian Brothers puts in terms of dealing with environmental issues and make sure that its employees are all trained on how to tend to them. And again, this would only be in the very remote and unlikely possibility if you did have that. To say it would never happen, I don't know, maybe it would, but this is not something that would be a regular occurrence. It would be probably about as rare as if you had a building catch on fire or something. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. You can't cover and eliminate every potential risk, but hopefully you'll understand that we are working very hard to make sure we're eliminating that possibility and taking it to an absolute minimum. Additionally, this was the report, and I have copies of this. Hopefully you all just received these. These were given to Jim Silliman. Was it come this morning? Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I hope I have enough for everybody.
Thank you.
I think you were turned around.
And thank you. Yes.
John, can you get, there you go. I think it's stopped. Thanks.
Mr. Green specifically looked at this expert and asked him to look at this issue. And it's about a 4-page report. It's not too long, but he goes through and explains why the risk of antifreeze is effectively a de minimis, if not a remote and completely absent risk. He talks about the release of these types of fluids is a hypothetical. It's not a guarantee. It's just a hypothetical. If you had some car that happened to be damaged enough that it was left on the property and it was leaking in those areas where it had those types of fluids. So probably unlikely with the type of work that this shop does. Again, this is not a heavy body repair shop or one that's going to be working on cars that are in accidents that would have those types of issues of leaking fluids. Antifreeze coolant changes, they require specialized equipment, which this company has. Again, coolant also is diluted. Most people, when they put antifreeze in the car, usually put some antifreeze and some water because you don't have to put it all antifreeze. So even if it did leak, it's already diluted at that point. His conclusion towards the back of his report, he says that the hypothetical coolant release occurring at the site would generate a de minimis condition release occurrence, which could be easily mitigated. And the mitigation is that 35-page report on what we have in terms of training. It's mitigated also by the type of business that it is, and it's also mitigated by the types of drains and other safety mechanisms that we have. Lastly, the conclusion was that the coolant release is not a significant risk to human health or the environment. So hopefully you'll have a chance to look at that, but this expert goes in a lot of detail about that. And again, we take the environment and the health and safety of Crystal Lake very seriously. We want it to be protected, and that's why we've agreed to go these extra lengths to make sure that it is over and above agreeing and complying with state, local, and federal EPA regulations. This is our site. This is the one at Crestwood. A very nice looking, attractive facade in front. You can see the parking lot, and these pictures were taken by me, and I just stopped by on a random day. This was not called and set up. These are not stock photos. I went by and checked out the lots, the things that they had. You can see how clean their floors are. They are almost immaculate. You can see them shining. And again, I'm not exaggerating when you say they're cleaner than most people's kitchen floors. To the left, you'll see all of their mechanics, and that's mechanical devices, and that's where they keep and would store fluids. And all those fluids are kept completely to environmental EPA standards. They operate their stores to the highest possible standards. The shop floors are cleaned with the Zamboni-style machine. And Billy, I might have to have you come explain what a Zamboni-style machine, but I assume that's something that does a very good job. And no pollutants are ever released into the environment. They also have oil-absorbing mats. To the extent that ever happens, they have mats to clean that up in addition to rags. All automotive fluids are contained in federal, EPA, and state-compliant double-hold containers, above-ground containment vessels. So that is what you're looking at. That's how the fluids are stored at this location. And one other thing that I didn't mention, I talked a little bit about the culture and type of company that Christian Brothers is. They are originally out of a small town in Texas. That's where they started. They now have 280 shops about nationwide. If they were a company that had issues, it would be easy to locate and find those on the internet. They were asked, the opposition was asked about that if they found anything, and there was nothing legitimate that they found nationwide of that company that had any issues. And they thought they'd found a couple things, and Ashley said, nope, that's not it, and rebutted that. So this company takes these things very seriously, and this location would be going over and above their normal operations. This is the oil water interceptor that Ashley was also describing that would capture the oil in the drains. And then there's our trash can, not a particularly pleasant thing, but you've got to have that for business. But even that is relatively clean, that you'll notice. And the operation details, already mentioned this. This is light automotive. This is not heavy automotive. The hours of operation Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday only for the first 180 days, and Sundays never. No tire recapping or body repair, body shop repairs. And I think that's it. The only thing I wanted to mention is I know this is a new hearing, but hopefully you'll have had an opportunity to review the evidence that was submitted to the Planning Commission. We did have a different witness, Paula Tolliver, who also testified, and she answered a lot of questions about the process and things about the company specifically as well. So hopefully you all will take that in consideration. But with that, we'll just open it up for questions, and I thank you all very much for your time and
I think
consideration.
we'll wait for our questions till the court does it. We're not going to.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank
we're going
you.
to wait until later on that, okay? I'm going to ask if is there anybody here to speak in opposition to this application here today? Okay, I'd like to ask those people to please stand and raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All right, now the first opposition spokesman may come forward.
Yeah, they said, yes. Yeah, and I can just click through it.
Just, you can arrow down.
Perfect.
If one helps you show.
All right, thank you. All right.
He needs to state his name.
Yep. Good afternoon, Fiscal Court Magistrates and Judge Vogel. While the members of Fiscal Court know me, for the record, my name is Blaine Anderson. I live at 1414 Grandview Court, which is on the Highway 53 side of Crystal Lake, and my property is a lakefront property. There's a couple of side notes. I'm newly appointed to the County Board of Elections, working with Amy and our sheriff in the back of the room. So just attended my first meeting in February. And as you may recall, I was one of the 3 citizen commissioners that was charged with the redistricting of the magisterial lines this past summer. So I think you all know me from several things such as that. I'm also a board member of the Crystal Lake Club, a club that has overseen Crystal Lake since it was created 60 years ago. I am not a highly paid lawyer. I'm just a retired hotel executive that's turned a bus driver that actually, normally at this time, I'd be helping to drive kids home from Locust Grove and or East Oldham Middle School. But Jim Allen, who spoke on behalf of many of the neighbors of Crystal Lake at the Planning Commission meeting, he was not able to attend today. He had some family obligations out of state, so I'm kind of stepping in on behalf of several neighbors that we have consulted regarding today's presentation. For the past several years, I have also been a volunteer water sampler with the Curry's Fork Watershed, a group of volunteers dedicated to protecting and improving our most important water resource. We've done tests such that include things like for phosphates, nitrates, and E. coli.
It was interesting that during the Planning Commission hearing and after making my public comments, the attorney for Christian Brothers, Mr. Talbot, cast aspersions towards the preventative efforts volunteers like myself undertake to proactively identify concerns and search for causes and remedies to the situation. To quote Mr. Talbot, he stated, quote, "One gentleman mentioned that they are testing the water all the time. Well, why are they testing the water all the time? It's probably because there already are problems that they are having to take care of," unquote. Mr. Talbot went on to state, quote, that does not mean that our one single solitary site is going to appreciably cause any more issues with that, unquote. Well, Mr. Talbot is right. If there is no change in zoning, there won't be any appreciable issues with the site. Drawing an analogy to Mr. Talbot's testimony, apparently routine and preventative water maintenance practices are unnecessary if all we are doing is reacting to a problem instead of being proactive. Would Mr. Talbot give the same advice to customers of Christian Brothers to not bring your vehicle in for routine maintenance and just wait for a problem to manifest and become a bigger problem before seeking a solution? I'd certainly think that would not be the case. Another way to look at his comment is that when the community pool reopens this year, you should not worry about training your staff to do the daily water testing, as that would only be necessary to detect problems that are already needing to be taken care of. As to his other quote that one single solitary site is not going to appreciably cause any more issues, that is the primary topic I'd like to address with my presentation. Mr. Talbot stated that a zoning change from C1 to C2 was, quote, completely appropriate for that area, unquote, and went on to state that it was, quote, compatible with its surroundings. Paula Tolliver, who's not here with us today but was with Christian Brothers, came up from Houston, stated that it would be, quote, exceedingly rare, unquote, to have environmental issues with a facility such as Christian Brothers. When discussing exceedingly rare, that reminded me of a quote from the movie Dumb and Dumber, with Jim Carrey playing Lloyd. He asked Mary in the movie what the chances are of them becoming a couple, and if the chances are like 1 in 100, and she responds, more like 1 in 1 million. Lloyd responds slowly, so you're telling me there's a chance. Well, that's the way many of us feel about even an exceedingly rare chance of an environmental issue from this single solitary site that will not be built if the zoning change is denied. We've put together some notes. We actually sent this in Wednesday. There's a few bullet points that I think have been addressed since we sent this to the fiscal court, but I will review some of this. The first slide here, the summary. Automotive repair facilities are cited as an increased potential source of stormwater contaminants pollution, i.e. a hotspot in watersheds, and this is per the Maryland Department of the Environment from 2023. They concentrate high-risk broken vehicles pollution into a small area. Rezoning this lot from C1 to C2 permitted uses are inconsistent with the lot's environmentally sensitive location above Crystal Lake. It is inconsistent with Oldham County's illicit discharge ordinance objectives. It is inconsistent with the goals and expectations of the Crystal Lake community, and there is insufficient social, economic, or physical benefit for the public to justify the risk for this specific lot. And I'm going to address some of that in my following slides. To the opening comments made by Mr. Talbot, we don't doubt that Christian Brothers may be an excellent employer. But 15 residents of Crystal Lake testified at the Planning Commission their concerns regarding the zoning change and why this specific location. I also, in his testimony that he just made, he talked about 7 cars during peak hours. I would really question that number. How many of you take your car to a automotive repair facility and someone takes you home or you get a ride to work? Well, is that incorporated into the 7? I think that number is way understated. But we're not really going to get into a lot of discussion regarding the traffic situation. On this next slide, we talk, and you saw it on their presentation as well, it's an environmentally sensitive lot. The stormwater runoff from this lot goes directly into Crystal Lake. There are, in fact, existing vehicle services, but as was noted on their map, All of those are on the other side, the south side of Highway 53. And you'll see that current zoning on the north side is appropriate for C1 zoning. So again, as you look at this particular map, you can see at the top, Crystal Lake is in green. You got the yellow, the R2 for the residential. And then you notice that little bit of a buffer, which is all C1. Notice that they kind of skipped over this, but notice that there's no C2 on the north side of Highway 53. It's all on the south side. And why is that? Because in the long-term planning of this, I'm sure the county is looking at that saying, well, things like drainage, you know, when it's on the south side of Highway 53, it's not draining towards a public waterway such as Crystal Lake. So there is no current C2 zoning on the north side. Mr. Talbot referenced the appropriateness of changing this to C2 based on the land use map. And also, again, he referenced the proximity to C2 and C3. So again, I just mentioned that all of that is on the south side of Highway 53. And again, that's mainly because of the contour of the land and the elevation change, which flows down towards Crystal Lake.
Judge, just one question or a statement or whatever about it's north and it's east and west of 53, not north and south.
Okay.
I think so. Just to make sure everybody understood the directions. So, thank you.
Must be my Minnesotan. On the next slide, again, we talk about being an environmentally sensitive area. Now, the first bullet there, they have addressed a lot of this as far as their plans and training and hazmat materials and whatnot. There are still some questions that we have as far as will the proposed detention pond work for all water flow rates, whether it's low or high rainfall amounts. I know since I've lived on the lake for over 11 years, we've had times where we've had, upwards of 4 inches of rain that dropped in one morning. Is it going to be able to handle all of that? Will a KPDES permit be required? And if so, will the building permit approval be dependent upon the result? And then will the detention pond be owned by the applicant or unincorporated like O'Reilly's? Let me just state that the picture you see up here is, it's of various oil and antifreeze leaks, and they're not pictures that we're aware of being taken at a Christian Brothers location, so I want to make sure I mention that. It is simply to demonstrate that when a vehicle with any sort of a leak is left in a parking lot, whether overnight or over a weekend, since Christian Brothers just stated that their plans are to be only open during the weekdays, and after that initial 180-day period, they will not be open on Saturday or Sunday. So if a car is left there, it could be an issue. While it was stating during the Planning Commission that cars sitting in the parking lot is simply not the market that this operation will have, a quick trip to the Christian Brothers location in Crestwood would prove otherwise. Plus, this location is planning to have, I believe they said 51 parking spaces, is that correct? 51 parking spots, which is almost double the parking spaces of the Crestwood location. This will be a AAA approved facility. Tow trucks will be allowed to drop off cars as we understand. Should there be a binding element that cars are not allowed to be dropped off after hours or at the very least on the weekends when an employee would be able to assess if there's any potential leaks or other environmental risks? During the testimony, a comment was made that Christian Brothers is mainly an appointment-driven company. That would seem to indicate that a placement in a C1 zoned area would not be as important as other locations already zoned C2. If you think about it, how many of you make an appointment to have your car maintained based on a high traffic location versus based on past experience, cost of repairs, or maintenance? This next slide we just talked about, it only takes one pollution event. This is what we're really concerned about. Oil does not dilute in water. The slide talks about that 1 pint of oil can produce a slick of approximately 1 acre of water. They've talked about antifreeze, and we're trying to address that, but antifreeze is toxic. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The detention pond and the unit that they're planning to use. How will the maintenance plan be enforced? And will it be effective, again, in all stormwater flow rates? During their testimony, when questioned about what type of system could handle antifreeze pollution in swales or detention ponds, Ms. Zabel from their engineering firm was not able to confirm with her extensive knowledge of various systems that any of the systems would be able to handle this type of pollution, and she thought it would be best to be handled by wastewater treatment facilities. Again, this is from the Planning Commission meeting, her testimony. In other words, antifreeze could drain into Crystal Lake. Anything that goes into water, such as a lake, undergoes a degradation process. This degradation process depletes oxygen levels in the lake, leaving less for the aquatic life. This is according to Monica Nowierski, an aquatic risk assessment scientist. According to the Environmental Improvement and Energy Resources Authority, antifreeze is primarily composed of ethylene glycol, a sweet and poisonous compound which can kill or injure pets, birds, fish, and other wildlife when disposed into the environment. It can also contain heavy metal contaminants picked up from vehicle engines during use. So if there is any rain event that occurs during or after a car sitting in the parking lot has been leaking antifreeze, we can anticipate there might be potential harm to Crystal Lake. Another comment that arose during the Planning Commission meeting was that C1 and C2 zoning allows 65% impervious coverage, but they proposed 37% impervious coverage. My understanding of impervious coverage is that this does not allow a fluid to pass through it, which would include the building and the parking lot. Yet looking at the development plan that we saw just a moment ago, it looks like the impervious coverage is nowhere near 37%, would be much closer to 65%. I believe that's a good question to ask in your comments. The greater the impervious coverage, the greater the flow of water into the detention pond versus absorption into the natural topography. This next slide talks about pollution of even small sections of lake will impact land value, ecosystem health, and lake use. And you'll see on the right there, we talk about, there was one suggestion, well, we could always add more detention ponds on private properties, or, we as Crystal Lake Club could obtain an environmental insurance policy, which adversely pushes the costs of this development onto us as a club. You'll notice on these slides, this is actually from Jim Allen's property there. This is a little cove that he sits on, and the picture on the right with the red shows you how the stormwater flow comes directly into the little cove there on Crystal Lake. And it doesn't take a heavy rainfall to get some serious drainage coming down that hill, which can affect the properties as well. Some other questions. Does the applicant follow the guidelines of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System or the Kentucky Pollutant Discharge Elimination System? Again, these are just questions we're trying to make sure we understand. The EPA suggested we ask whether the planned facility has a written contingency plan or basic contingency plan procedures in place to responding to spills and releases of hazardous waste, and will these be required for the approval of this zoning change? Again, during Ms. Zabel's testimony, she noted that Christian Brothers would install a Hydro International downstream defender system, I think I said that right, or something similar to capture hazardous waste. This should be a condition of if the zoning change is approved, which it sounded like it was one of the binding elements. That being said, a system such as this has a 2-year manufacturer's warranty. So what happens if the system breaks down after the warranty expires? Will there be annual inspections to ensure proper maintenance? What model size do they plan to install, as they range from 4 to 12 feet, with the model impacting the depth measurement from the outlet invert to the top of the bottom slab? Don't forget that despite all this system jargon, this system does not deal with antifreeze. We asked the applicant and the county, are you planning ahead for changes in vehicle technology to avoid unreasonable risk? You'll notice on this slide, here's a electric vehicle fire, and it took 36,000 gallons of water to put out one Tesla over Christmas. Where does 36,000 gallons of contaminated water go, especially if that happened on that facility, on that property? We're not sure we'll ever know, but we can reduce the risk to our watershed with smart planning. And do we think this is going to be an isolated situation? Some states, such as California, you're probably aware, are mandating the move from gas to electric-powered cars by the year 2035. This zoning change will introduce those additional risks associated with changes in technology, changes that we can't necessarily be sure of. This next slide, we talk about the county has responsibilities, and this is from the OC, the Oldham County Illicit Discharge Ordinance. And we make a note that some of the bolding here are comments that we added. Again, I won't necessarily go through all of this, but it basically points to the fact that Oldham County and the magistrates and fiscal court has responsibilities here. The county has testified that it does not have sufficient resources to enforce pollution regulations. Pollution testing requires special training and equipment and may require monitoring over long periods, such as for heavy metal accumulation. The Kentucky Energy and Environment, the EPA in Kentucky, said a Kentucky Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit would be beneficial for this specific project, and should the county authorize high-risk land use, that it has the obligation but not the ability to protect. Let me repeat that last sentence. Should you as magistrates representing Oldham County authorize high-risk land use, that you and future magistrates and the county have the obligation but not the ability or resources to protect. Conclusions here. Crystal Lake is often burdened with problems and remediation costs disregarded by developers and businesses. And you see some examples there. Silt from the Woodridge Estates, silt from Summit Park, ineffective design and maintenance from the O'Reilly's detention basin. You see the picture on the right. This was taken just this past December, where it's at the inlet of Crystal Lake. And what we have been doing for the last several years is we have been drawing the lake down. It is a dam-controlled lake. We've been drawing the lake down usually in the fall in order for homeowners to repair riprap, repair docks and things like that. So you can see this is when we still had taken the lake down a little bit. But what do you notice on sort of the right-hand side of the picture there? This is the creek that's coming down Creek Fork that feeds into Crystal Lake. You notice all the silt that's built up on the right-hand side? Well, guess where that's coming from? Things like these other developments that I mentioned. Crystal Lake spends a lot of time and money managing Crystal Lake and supporting Curry's Creek watershed water quality programs. We need the county's support and help to strategically plan ahead on land use, execute our mutual watershed objectives, and avoid high-risk land uses such as a vehicle repair facility above a waterway. The best way to do that is to reject the Planning Commission's very close vote to recommend rezoning and keep this lot Zone C1. During the Planning Commission testimony, Paula Tolliver with Christian Brothers noted she was unaware, and I believe Mr. Talbot just mentioned it again, of any environmental issues at any of the other Christian Brothers locations. They kind of challenged us to go and do some homework. According to the U.S. EPA, there was an issue at the Christian Brothers location on U.S. Highway 90 in Daphne, Alabama. It appears they were cited for sedimentation/siltation and needed to complete an Advanced Restoration Plan, or ARP. This was on the DeOlive Creek watershed, where the water condition was listed as impaired due to pathogen/sediment and was reported to the EPA. I do have some slides. I could put it on here, but I'll be happy to pass this along as well if they would like to see what some of our neighbors have found. And to be very clear, we're talking about Christian Brothers Automotive and not Christian Brothers Construction, which was brought up at the Planning Commission meeting. At a Christian Brothers location in Centennial, Colorado, they were also assessed with an impaired water condition issue due to metals other than mercury at Cherry Creek Lake - Cherry Creek. So to answer the question from Mr. Talbot when he challenged Jim Allen and the Crystal Lake neighbors that if there were environmental issues at other Christian Brothers locations, those are a couple of examples that we were able to find. To wrap up my comments, the Planning Commission initially moved to deny the zoning change. which was defeated 6-6 with Chairman King voting against this motion. A motion was then made to approve the zoning change with a similar 6-6 vote with Chairman King voting for the zoning change. Obviously, many commission members, including Susie Walzer, Sue Ann Jones, John Falvey, Rollo Fox, Barry Hampton, and Ben Winters, who voted against the zoning change, had sufficient concerns to vote against the zoning change. This was not a slam dunk decision. My hope is that you will have sufficient concerns to deny this zoning change. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll invite the next person to come forward. We have 27 minutes left for the opposition. I don't know how long your presentation is.
I just have a couple questions, Judge.
Yeah, you state your name and address, please.
My name is Karen Morose Hunstiger, and at 1616 Crestview Drive, LaGrange. I'd like to ask, this digester, will it be below the drainage that is currently on the property? Will this digester be put below the current drainage that's on the property?
Right, when we have questions from the opposition, you have to come up and speak at the microphone, please.
The top of the structure is set at the rim elevation based on the final grading of the site.
But there is a current drain on the property. Will it be below that?
There's a drain just outside of the property. That's going to be our discharge point from our outlet control structure. We are required to make sure that we have positive drainage to it, so it has to be at a higher elevation for gravity flow to go into that existing drain.
And do you realize that it's probably 60 feet to the lake at that point?
I do believe it is greater than 60 feet.
Straight down, or pretty close?
Vertically?
Yes.
Okay.
It's pretty steep.
Okay.
And where's this retention pond going?
The detention pond is on the site plan.
I didn't see it, and
Okay.
it was not noted.
It's the thing that said detention pond.
Well, from back there, you cannot see what it
Okay,
says.
we can go, well, I guess I don't know how to go back to the,
All right,
slide,
Brian,
right?
we want to show how to get back to that. And by the way, normally how this would go is the presentation by those in opposition can go for 50 minutes. And at that point, then you're allowed another 30 minutes to question the applicant.
well,
So
it's
the-
not labeled
So,
on this. Okay, thank you.
We'll say this is the,
Sorry, Judge.
that's all right, you can ask the questions. It's,
Yes, proposed on-site detention pond. Oh, thank you. Is right here.
And that drainage that's drawn on there, that rectangular piece that comes off of it,
This drainage easement?
yes, that goes straight down into the lake.
Okay,
And so no pollutants will go from that pond if we have a 4-inch an hour rain, into the lake.
so we will be working with the county engineering standards as well as the binding element so that we meet the listed rain events for the county so that our structures and our basin and our outlet release rates meet those standards so that we aren't increasing the rate of the runoff and we are utilizing best management practices to capture the pollutants previously discussed.
And we have a right, as people who are downhill, to worry about this.
Yes.
Thank you, Judge.
all right, thank you. I believe there's a gentleman, did you want to make a statement, please?
My name is Nelson Lemon, at address 2025 Crystal Cove Drive. And exactly where that is you just saw a picture that Blaine had that showed all of the sediment coming down. I'm at the headwater of that lake, and the very first house that sees all the mud and debris that's coming down in it right now. And that was supposedly not going to happen, but obviously it does. So my questions in all of this is not, it really pertains to why do we need this? When you think about it, this car repair area, no one, you haven't seen anyone here today that's voted for it except for out-of-town people. The same thing had happened on the Planning Commission. There was nobody there. There was 15 people that spoke. Everyone spoke against it. And I'm asking you, why do you think that is? You know, there's no residents coming in and say, oh, this is what we need. What we need is something besides a car repair area. I heard the attorney talk about there's no wrecks going to be at the car accidents, so to speak, at the facility. And that would be the only time that antifreeze spills from them. Anyone that's ever had a car that had a radiator hose broken or the engine run hot for whatever reason, antifreeze flows out of it. So this is going to happen. It happens every day. I've had many old cars and they always leak antifreeze. So don't get the picture that it's not going to happen. It will happen. And I'd like to thank Blaine for putting together such a good comprehensive study of what can happen if one thing happens. And that's what we're asking you. Turn this thing down. We don't need it. There's not a resident over there that wants to say, we need this place. We'd like to have something a little bit better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Blaine, you have 21 minutes left. Do you have any questions that you'd like to pose to the applicant? We didn't give you a chance. I think you left a couple hanging up there. I don't know if you want to ask them directly or not. The fiscal court's going to be asking questions. Right. Okay. Yes, the court has a chance to ask questions, but they may not be the same ones that you might ask. But okay. I think the opposition is closed, and now we can ask the court members if they would like to discuss any of the application with the applicant.
Judge.
Sir, Magistrate Jeffries.
Yes. Attorney Talbert. Just a few questions here. The watershed that this proposed location is, which is currently C1, is in the Crystal Lake watershed. It runs into Crystal Lake. The other locations that were brought to our attention, which would be to the west of 53, are in a different watershed. Is that correct?
Ashley, do you know the answer to that question? Did you hear the question?
I did hear the question. I did not.
You need.
Oh, so sorry.
I personally don't know the answer to that, so I'll have to.
I did hear the question. I did not do a watershed analysis of the county.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you did, you would find that the Kroger and the Big O and some of the other locations are in a different watershed. This proposed site is in, the runs into Crystal Lake within 600, 700 feet or whatever. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned about the oil, or someone, maybe John did, about the oil capture mats. How are they disposed of? How is that handled?
In that same area as those double-hulled liquid containers are also EPA regulated. Usually they're drums, either 35-gallon or 55-gallon drums for those oil-soaked materials. So once the mats absorb an oil or an antifreeze or some other pollutant, they get put into one of those regulated drums and labeled, shipped, and treated appropriately.
Okay. What about I think Blaine brought up the issue of, antifreeze. What you all are proposing or what you all agreed to in a binding element does not separate or cannot separate, antifreeze from the waste stream or whatever. So, if there is a car that's, say, brought in on a Friday night or whatever, and it's left there over the weekend, and, this is all, we don't know that it's going to happen or whatever, but, if it leaks and then gets into the detention basin, we have a large amount of rain, could that not get directly into Crystal Lake, even if it went through this detention structure that you all are proposing?
You are correct. The Hydro International does not capture antifreeze because it is water soluble. If a vehicle were left overnight and there was a significant, say, a couple back-to-back 100-year rain events, the then diluted to a parts per million, potentially parts per billion part of glycol could then go through the emergency spillway for the basin, which is a required design element, which then would go off-site to the existing drain and could then potentially continue on into Crystal Lake.
Okay. And I assume that the structure that y'all are talking about that you're, going to put in would not capture any metals from a fire, from a Tesla or any of the batteries powered vehicles that are now coming onto the market?
So when a Tesla is on fire, it doesn't have oils and antifreeze.
No, but it has heavy metals.
It is not our intention to start fires on the site. It is part of it when something is caught on fire. I don't know that a lot of locations are going to be designed to capture a fire department truck release rate.
But there's not a lot of those other locations are 600 feet from a large water body, correct?
In LaGrange now.
Okay. That's all I have right now, Judge.
All right, Mr. Silliman, you have something to add?
You mentioned, Ashley, you mentioned the occurrence of back-to-back 100-year storm events. Just so the fiscal court is aware, the basin does operate under all storm events, so water will flow through even at a 2-year storm, not just the 200-year back-to-backs.
Yes, water does flow. However, the rate of a small portion of antifreeze to then flow through vegetation and then through the designed low-flow orifice.
Right, and the report that you were given describes a long path for this to travel through. I understand that. I just wanted the court to understand that it doesn't only leave over the spillway at a 100-year event. It always travels through the basin. The basin's meant to regulate it.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
Magistrate Woosley.
Question is for Mr. Talbot. I have two questions, but the first one I just wanted to clear up. When you originally were talking about this development plan that's on our screen now, you motioned with your finger that the entrance from O'Reilly's was going to be on the west parking lot, the front parking lot. But then on the display, it's coming from the east parking lot behind O'Reilly's. So I just want to confirm.
I don't claim to have my directions correct, but on this slide, the front of the site is to the left. That's where Highway 53 is. Right. The connection with O'Reilly's is on the north boundary, and so that is where the connection and access is to O'Reilly's.
So it's behind O'Reilly's building, not in front of it.
Is that correct?
It's at the top of the screen.
Yes.
Well, I know. I just want. Is it in the back of O'Reilly's? Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay.
Yes, that's
on one slide, you used your finger and you were on the front of O'Reilly's,
I think I did
but
that.
then everything else was in behind.
I misunderstood that. That's
I just wanted
correct.
to clear that up. My second question is, the intersection at Zale Smith and 53 has gotten to where it's one of our busiest backups at certain points of the day. Has the applicant considered moving your entrance off of Zale Smith onto the service road that runs in behind the buildings, so that we don't have any more entrances and exits onto Zale Smith between the service road and 53?
I don't think so. I doubt, Ashley, if you all considered that, I doubt they would want to. But with the very, I mean, I cannot overemphasize the limited amount of traffic from this site. I mean, think about it, 7 cars during an hour, that's about 1 every 10 minutes.
Understand. But
So-
I've been out there before and seen cars back up past the service road on Zale Smith waiting to go left or right onto 53.
Right.
And then you have cars backed up on 53 as they're waiting to turn into Zale Smith. So I'm trying to keep less traffic off of that section of Zale Smith there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're going to have some traffic from whatever you will ever approve on this site. We hope you approve our plan. You're not going to find any site that produces less traffic than the one that's before you now. We recognize that traffic is a concern at this area, and that's specifically what we think is one of the things that's important to recognize about this use in terms of the comprehensive plan and the land use and the transportation components of this. The traffic from this site are better than any other site that you can think of. If you had a restaurant, that would be 10 times worse. Most of the other uses, literally, they weren't just like 1 or 2 times greater. They were on the order of about 20 times at peak hour traffic greater. So the de minimis amount that we would have is because of those traffic problems, that's why you should want this type of site on this location.
Manager Tice.
And leave that up there. Part of my question was, it looks like that the building that they have is going to be closer to 53 than what O'Reilly's building structure is.
That's
Is that
true.
false? That's true.
That's true. On that one front edge, yes, because our building is oriented on the south side of the property on Zale Smith Road. So that's correct.
Okay. If your facility was pushed back and then you had the connectivity between O'Reilly's and your site across the front versus the back, why, and they're just right down the street from that, the continuous parking between the doctors, the bank, and Farm Bureau, I believe, they're all continuous across the front. That's part of it. Why did you put it in the back rather than shove your building back a little bit and not go across the front?
I'm going to call Ashley Ziebel to answer that. I'm presuming we did it that way because it preserves space for the detention basin, but I'll let her answer.
Just to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, are you asking for why we don't have a drive connection here?
Yes.
There are several feet of fall between this property and the existing O'Reilly's parking. Like, you kind of have to climb up this hill. So to put a drive there, it would be incredibly steep and unsafe to drive on.
Okay. But they do have the fall in the back that would match up.
Yes, it's much lower there, so it can be a more successful drive connection. The parking lot on that side and where our proposed drive connection is lower.
From the edge of your property on the map up there, okay, on your left side and on what I'm going to say the bottom part, what is your setback from the road right-of-ways?
So my understanding is that this line here is the road right-of-way. And then, let's see if I can zoom in. We have a proposed 10-foot building setback.
Off of that road right-of-way?
Yes.
So if that road was ever needed to be widened, that couldn't happen?
So this is the edge of pavement line of the road.
Is that it? Okay.
Yes, so you could widen the road within the existing road right-of-way.
Okay. And in the front, how close are you to the
So
53?
here's the existing edge of pavement for 53.
Okay.
So I believe you have at the narrowest point approximately 20 feet from edge of pavement.
To your all's property? Or the
Yes,
property
to the
line?
property line.
And the large dotted dotted lines are the property lines?
Yes, this
For
is
both-
the property
For
line.
both properties?
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easement or something else?
No, these are the property lines.
Across this, and I'll just make this a general question. I assume in our planning and zoning, in most cases, in C3 zoning, uses of all of or most of C2 uses would be be agreeable. You could use them in C3 property zoning, right? Would their application be acceptable in C3 zoning?
So to make Magistrate Tice, to make sure I'm asking understanding your question correctly, I'm going to frame it this way. The current zoning is C1.
Yes.
They're asking to go to C2.
Yes.
So you've introduced the concept of C3. Are you asking what the land uses are in C3?
No.
Okay.
Yes, could you do that? My question is, right across the street, there's a bunch of C3.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases on our planning books,
Understand.
if it's acceptable in C2, then it is also acceptable in C3. And I didn't want to make that assumption until I knew the answer, whether I was correct or not. And the reason I'm asking is you have property across the street, or county has property across the street that we've already identified is more than it's adequate C3. So
Okay, so the answer to your question is yes, there are more commercial uses allowed in the C3 than there are the C2, including the proposed use of vehicle repair.
fact, and that answers the question.
Okay.
So you've got, without making a zoning change, you've got adequate property across already C3, which doesn't ask us to make decisions that would be compromising, potentially compromising to the lake. And I'm also thinking myself, and maybe I don't have the right to, but I'll go on and say it because I'm thinking it, is that as Zale Smith Lane develops and progresses, then there may need to be a different area. And with my thinking is I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, everything's available across the street. You're moved away from the lake. Magistrate Jeffrey says that the property goes the other direction over there. Your vote from planning and zoning was, you might as well say it was a deadlock. A chairman breaks the ties or creates the tie. So it's not a slam dunk. I'm having difficulty figuring out, why didn't you choose something over there?
Billy, can you respond to that? The only thing I could answer is I assume that property was not for sale or not at a price they were considering, but I don't know the answer to that. I wasn't involved in it, so.
Excuse me, my name is Billy Green Jr.
A little louder, sir.
I'm going to ask you to project there so everybody
Right.
can hear you.
My name is Billy Green Jr., 17725 Katy Freeway, Houston, Texas, 77094. So I don't have an exact answer on why. For instance, so when these properties come to me, the first thing we do is we look at the zoning. So we would rather not rezone in a location. So the only reason why I think we wouldn't have gone across the street is because it either wasn't for sale or there was some problem with the price negotiation. Meaning that we didn't go across the street we wouldn't have volunteered to go through this process just for no reason. We would have preferred to have gone across the street where there was already the zoning.
And made inquiries there.
Correct.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, Magistrate Logston.
Yes, Jim, I'm going to follow up with Magistrate Tide's question. If there's turning lanes ever put in, is there enough room to put?
We can't hear you very well, please.
Is there enough
Can
room
you
to put a
turn your
right
mic
turning
up like
lane?
this, Mike, and speak into it?
I
There
am
you go.
speaking into it.
Well, we're not hearing you over here.
I can't help that. I mean, it's on and I'm speaking to the mic, so.
Okay, now we can hear you better.
Jim, right turning lanes and left turning lanes, is there enough room once that building's there that you could put right and left turning lanes in?
There does appear to be sufficient right-of-way. Again, we would probably address this, or we'd like to see this addressed more with the Kentucky Highway 53 study or plans. But again, if you look at I'm just kind of visually scaling, there's got to be 25 or so feet from the edge of pavement currently to that right-of-way or property line. So you could add a lane, and then considering also there's room on the other side, it does appear there's room to do some widening.
Okay, and I don't know, this next question, I don't know who needs to answer it, but has the easement been worked out with O'Reilly's Olive Heart?
We have had many discussions with them, and they are completely fine with it. We have not completely worked it out in terms of getting the document signed and inked and filed of record, no, but they've indicated no issues with that. And if we had any issues with it and we couldn't get the easement, then we would have to come back to the Planning Commission for a revised plan anyway.
Okay, all right. You know, I guess my only question is there's C3 across the street. So you could easily put the business over there and the same watershed problems would be the same. So I'm just thinking this through my head. So thank you. That's all I have.
Magistrate Dye.
Thank you, Judge. First off, I don't like changing zoning changes. I mean, someone prior to my arrival here, and in a different venue, decided certain things should be done certain ways and should have certain numbers and letters attached to it. So I don't like going back and changing what somebody else thought. There was a good reason for it then. I'd like to know what that reason was and why it's not a good reason now. You brought out quite a bit of information, you and the opposition, about the protection of the water, Crystal Lake, the watershed, and all of that. You know, I'm not going to be so naive to sit up there and believe that. They're in the business to work on automobiles. That's where they make their money, and I get that. But there's going to be a problem somewhere down the road. It's just there's odds. You know, if they could design and build a perfect repair shop, these things wouldn't happen. So there's going to be a problem somewhere down the road. We hear it about our public swimming pools where people put too much chlorine in the water and all those kind of things. So that's going to happen. My concern is if you recently, and I'm not going to say with the company, spilled a lot of urea into Hike Creek, and Metropolitan Sewer District shut the line. In the sewer lines, and they dispelled that particular multiple gallons of contaminated sewage out into Hike Creek instead of running through the plant, which would have destroyed equipment. And of course, there was a massive fish kill and all that, and down in behind between 1694 and 329. So these things happen. People make mistakes. There's all kinds of things. I mean, I get that. And you all have gone to great lengths, it sounds like to me, but there's not exactly every way to fix that. But the bottom line, it's going to happen. It's maybe not in my lifetime, but in someone's lifetime. I mean, you're right in what you all are doing, but trying to abate the situation, and they're right about the fact that yes, they want to protect their lake. But the thing that I guess what really gets one is about this traffic study. And you said that there's 7 cars a day. I think you said a minute ago, and I like that's the best part, was if he's going to put something on this lot, this is the best thing with the least traffic. And I believe even better than a restaurant. Yeah. So you did say a great statement.
Just a minor correction, 7 cars during the peak hours, 83 cars per day.
Okay, right. So how many doors does this building have? Service doors?
9.
9. If I was the people investing in this ground and going to all the work they're going to get this put in, I would like to hear someone, if I was a stockholder, I'd like to hear someone say, well, we want to double the business, which would double your peak hours to 18. Correct? Possibly?
14.
Well, I mean, our business, the numbers are based on what we think the business is going to be and what it can.
But is that 7? Is that 7 peak hours? Is that what you're
7 at the peak hours? That's
your projected number.
That is the projected number.
At
absolutely.
your best business day.
Well, I mean, to say that somebody, I mean, I got to be, in all due respect, we are having to fight with everybody from Crystal Lake on ifs and buts and Ghost. They've got no proof or evidence of anything. To segue into the answer to your question, I mean, they said, we met your challenge, Mr. Talbot, and we brought evidence of environmental issues, okay? Because we're talking about ifs and buts here, right? One of them was for sediment. That's a construction activity. Out of 280 places that they built out nationwide over 40 years, They came up with one where there was a sediment issue. The second one, let me talk about this one. This report, I'm just pulling, this is what Mr. Anderson gave me. They were cited, they looked at it, and this was the conclusion. Facility pollutants potentially contributing to impairment. None. None. That's 40 years and 280 locations. So could it happen? I mean, if you're going to ask me if it could happen, I guess there could be a tornado. There could be a lightning strike. There's always things you could do. And no matter what building is there, if it lights on fire, you're going to have a massive problem no matter what it is. So could you have any issues? I mean, could we have more traffic? I guess yes, it's on an average, right? I mean, it's taken on an average. Could you?
Speak a little bit to the traffic number.
All right, I'm going to let Ashley talk about the traffic.
I just wanted to clarify about the traffic. So it's not Christian Brothers specific, it's Automotive Service Center specific.
Well, that's the only name I would know to associate it with, Christian Brothers.
Okay, so the numbers we gathered are from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. They do nationwide studies of different types of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So this number was for automotive service centers, and then you base it off of a square footage range of the building. So this is a nationwide average number, not Christian Brothers specific.
All right. Okay, well, then I'll stand corrected on that, please. But, Mr. Talbot, I think me and you both agree. Yes, you could have a spill, and yes, there's going to be more cars.
I think, to answer your question honestly, could there be
I hope it's honestly.
Could there be a spill? Absolutely, there could
Yes.
be. But what there also could be, and this was a question I think was incredibly important that was asked at the Planning Commission by one of the planning commissioners. They asked Mr. Allen, does your HOA have any restrictions on doing any lawnmower or automotive maintenance on their properties? The answer was no. And you and I know, I mean, anybody that's been on a boat on a lake, puts gas in a boat or puts oil in a lawnmower, they're going to have more spills. If we're just going to look at it honestly, from looking at it as from a practical, realistic scenario, a multiple amount of homeowners that can do any type of work, and we know they're operating boats and putting gas in it and oil and everything else on that lake.
And you can see it right there on the water.
Where's the issue coming from? The evidence from this company is that they are bound by federal, state, and local regulations, which are severe in penalties. With 280 locations, the best we could come up with is one that they found, they were cited, they looked at it, and they came back and said there was no contamination. The other one had to do with construction. That's not a strong case on possibilities. That's a very minute one. And I mean, at the end of the day, you all have to take a look at this. I know there's a lot of passion and emotion and concern, but I would say the concern is not reasonable, nor is it based in anything of any logic. It's certainly not based of anything that makes any sense on any facts or any expert opinions. None. It's all just we're worried. I mean, the part about the Tesla burning up, what is the higher probability that a Tesla happens to have it being an accident and burn up on Highway 53, or that it's going to light on fire at a professional business when you got 8 to 10 trained mechanics there to deal with it? Where's the real risk? It's not from this business. And this is going to be a good company. This would be their second location in Oldham County, which would be more than any other county in the state. And I implore you all, it's a good business that you all should like to have in your county. Your comprehensive plan talks about business and wages. I mean, to have wages where people can come in and many people can earn $55,000 up and some earning well over $100,000 that they can support families on, that they can send kids to school, and they can be home on weekends to go watch their kids for games. That's the kind of employer you all want. Could they go across the street? I don't know. They've got to get a contract on that. I mean, I guess they could if you get a contract. But I can tell you this, they're a new company to town, and are they going to be feeling very welcome? They've been in this process now for a year with Oldham County, and here we are at the last day for your all's decision with no evidence, none, of any real legitimate potential problems. And the thought is, well, you all should just come back and look at another piece of property. I mean, I haven't asked them, but it's not going to be too, I don't think they're going to be feeling extremely welcomed and be anxious to run through another process. They're a good company. The risk of pollutants is nil. It is effectively non-existent. And I can't defend Ghost. I mean, that's what I'm being asked to do, but.
No, that's,
All right.
that's why
let's,
I want to answer his question.
All right. We got 2 minutes
That's-
left in here.
That is the reason why I asked that question. If you moved across the street, you still have, they wouldn't even have to be here right now. That was my whole point to that. Because if they were on C3, they would be allowed to do it.
Well, we would still have to get the plan approved.
Well, I understand, but I'm just saying.
Right.
You wouldn't be going for a zoning change.
That's correct, yes.
Magistrate Highlands has a question, hasn't asked one yet.
So I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to look at the facts of the situation and what we're talking about. And I'd be more worried about antifreeze coming off of 53 than I would be worried about antifreeze coming off of a Christian Brothers site because of the accidents that happen on 53 regularly. Not asking you to give the number, but I did a quick Google search, and you're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of a gallon to a gallon and a quarter of pure antifreeze in a vehicle that's likely diluted 50-50. The fact that the cars things that you're working on are cars and not trucks. If it goes up to trucks, that number goes up exponentially. I do appreciate you trying to put the facts out there, and I think that's very important. That's what we should be looking at, is the facts. There's all kinds of other development that could be put on this site, but we're not looking at any other development. We're looking at this development. One comment I take issue with, it is in your opinion, and that's great, that this is the best business for this site. But it's the only business that's been put in front of us for this site. So it's kind of like, I've asked the question every once in a while, they said, we got to pave this road. Is that the most important road to pave? I haven't seen the list, so I don't know. So we only got one business that's been brought in front of us to put on this site. As far as the environmental stuff, I guess I'm trying to understand, with the number of cars that are there, do you have any idea what the average length of time that a vehicle would sit outside and wait for parts? And I guess I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but I know in my case, I was very fortunate today that I punctured the sidewall of a tire and the shop was able to get it fixed the same day. But I was also cautioned it could take up to a week. So do we have any idea what the timeline is that a vehicle could sit outside?
Billy,
with
I think
50 spots, I guess my question is, I don't want to see 50 cars.
Okay.
Well, just keep in mind on the 50 spots, you've got cars that are waiting to get repaired, and then when they get repaired, they got to have a place
All right,
to
good
put
point.
them. So, and then you hope, I mean, I guess you kind of, as a business, you hope they're filled, but they don't want to be in a position where they're overfilled. The 51 is because they think that will comfortably accommodate their maximum load.
Okay.
And so you're probably talking about a lot less. And with 9 bay doors, I mean, if you think just 9 cars a day, in a day, if hopefully those are filled, you're going to have some cars going back and forth in the lot. So,
And Mr. Green wants to make a comment, then we're going to move on to the next section in the hearing. Okay. Go ahead, please.
Well, just to respond to the parking count, it's similar to any other large retailer. The Walmarts and the Targets, those parking lots aren't designed for a random Tuesday or a random Thursday. They're really designed for the peak, which would be right before vacations, for instance, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Christmas, and that's the reason for the maximum count. It's not for a random day. It's really for max. For our type of operation, that's usually right before summer vacations, right before holidays, when people will get ready to take trips.
Okay.
Thank you.
how long are cars usually sitting there? Is it usually same day in and out, or do they sit there for a week?
That's general. So, normally we wouldn't have a car sitting for a week. I mean, that would probably be a very extreme circumstance. It's usually in and out, 2 days possibly. And again, we also utilize a shuttle service. Well, that's beside the point, but usually short visit.
Okay.
All right. We're going to, I want to ask one question, we're going to move on to the final presentation by the applicant. How big is the piece of property you're buying? What is the size of that? Is that an acre, less than an
I think
acre, more than an acre?
it's 1.06 acres, is that right?
1.06, okay.
That's correct.
Thank you, all right.
Judge,
I'm sorry, that part of the hearing is going to end now, and we're going to go on to a final closing statements from the applicant.
Just for point of process, Judge, is this my close, do I have?
Yes,
the
this is, you have
closing
10
too, or-
minutes to finish, and then the opposition will have 10 minutes to rebut your 10 minutes.
And then I don't have any
And
other
then
time
we're
after
going to,
that.
then after that, we're going to go to the court. I think that'll be how it is, so.
First of all, I want to thank all of you all for your time. I think you all have absorbed the evidence. I don't think this is extraordinarily complicated. It is filled with emotion, though, and so forth. And I really want you all to focus on thinking about the 8 to 10 families that are going to have a person in their family making a good wage, a good salary, to take care, who can live in Oldham County, in addition to all the people in Oldham County in this growing area that need car services and will have that service available to them. They won't have to drive across town. They won't have to drive to Crestwood. It'll be close to them to cut down on miles. I had mentioned in response to some of your comments, Magistrate Hounds, about why I think this is the best spot. I guess the best, what does that mean, right? I think it's a really good one for sure. And I think for these reasons. There's basically 3 issues. Traffic is a major one. Traffic with this site could not really be better. It just couldn't. It's a funny shaped site.
Everybody trying to tell me how to
It's
run
awkward it's by an intersection. It's awkward where your entrances and exits are going to be. What I learned about the connection to O'Reilly's, I didn't know about the hill that prevents it from being up close. Those are problems and issues that are not going to be unique to this use. This is going to be anybody that comes has those same issues. And so we've got to figure out something that can fit there. And to find something that can fit there on a relatively small lot at that intersection, and not have its entrances on 53, because a lot of businesses would prefer to have their entrance there, and still accommodate not adding much to the traffic. This project, this rezoning, is a home run on that point. The site, which I've kind of alluded to, but it's an awkward site because it's small and it's narrow and it's bound in by sides and right-of-way, and you got a detention on the back. How many businesses can legitimately fit there? It's a limited number. It truly is. So I don't know if it's a home run, but it's definitely probably a double base hit on that as well. The only real issue is this concern about environmental issues. And I understand that you all are taking that seriously, but remember, we are taking that extraordinarily seriously. And I know I keep harping on this, but it's important. If you're wondering whether it's going to be a legitimate issue, the history of that company tells the story. 280 places, stores, service centers, and over 40 years of service. And we've got 2 examples, one that it was found no contamination, and the other had to do with building, with construction. That has nothing to do with environmental issues. It certainly has nothing to do with the infinitesimally small issue that you could potentially have with antifreeze. That's diluted. It just is not. The risk is low, and what you'll get as a county for this business with these high-paying jobs, because any other business that could fit there, they're probably going to be paying a couple people minimum wage. They're not paying full benefits, and that's something that is important. It's part of your comprehensive plan. It's part of your consideration. If you'll reviewed the report, the record from the Planning Commission hearing, we did a very detailed compliance statement, and I think that is, am I correct, that is part of the record? I believe that is part of the record. We deal with the land use in detail, and I can go through all those details. We spend 2 pages of single space on that, but I really just want to, because I know you all have read it, I want to comment on this. And I think this is important to your comment, Magistrate Dye. This is a designated by your future land use map, because you mentioned you don't really like to rezone if you don't have to, and I can appreciate that. But your future land use map designates this as a commercial district, not as a C1 district, not as a C2, not as C3. It's a commercial district. In other words, all of those things are posited as being things that could be uses and zonings that are appropriate for this area. That is what your comprehensive plan talks about on land use. Transportation, we pretty much covered that. I mean, we're a low traffic generator, and right now there's traffic problems there, so we hit a home run on that. The infrastructure is in place to handle 7 cars at the peak hours, and maybe even a couple more, perhaps if you had a real busy time. But we're not talking about other uses that are more likely to have 50, 70, 100, maybe even 200 during peak hours. Nothing even close to that. So it's appropriate for the transportation. On the business use, there's lots of things you can talk about. I mean, the construction will be wages. This is a commercial area designated for this type of operations, and it's going to create some of the best jobs that I guarantee you, for this 1 acre site, this use is going to create the best paying jobs for families and make a difference in a lot of people's lives. Not hypothetical, not ifs and buts, but a real difference in people's lives. That is where we satisfy that. The environmental, I think we've covered that ad nauseum. I mean, there's not anything more we can do. There truly is not. We cover the oil. We've got separate generators. We have drains. We have training. We have all the tools to collect everything. We follow the double-hold bins that hold everything to make sure it is safe and you don't have spills. The only evidence, and it's not even really evidence, the only testimony was, well, you could have a car left there that happens to be so damaged that it's leaking a diluted fluid, and you also could happen to have a horrible rain that does that. But even at that, there's no testimony of what damage that would do. I would submit that it's nil to nothing. Ashley talked about that very point. It would be diluted already coming out of the car. It's going to go through grass, through a driveway, through the grass to get further diluted. And the rain is going to dilute it. If we're talking about the rain that's really going to push it down to that lake, it's a massive rain. There wouldn't be anything left. Plus, that particular chemical, which is the really only one of concern, degrades naturally. It degrades naturally. So the issues that lake has, they're already doing testing. That's because they already have problems. Most likely it's because of their own use they already have. I'm not denigrating them for that. If I lived on that, I would do the same thing. I've been to lakes. I like to enjoy them, and that's what people do. Those are the things that are really a threat to that lake, and they have to deal with. This site with Christian Brothers is not going to be a threat to that lake whatsoever. I encourage you all to approve this site. It is fully supported by your comprehensive plan. It's going to be a terrific use for your all's county, a terrific cash generator with taxes, a terrific company that's going to bring jobs, and I mean good paying jobs. Did you want to mention something, Ashley?
I thought I might just...
I will conclude my comments and finish with Ashley. Thank you all very much for your time.
I just wanted to circle back on the main focus of this proceeding, which is the justification of going from a C1 district to a C2 district and what that means for the area, including Crystal Lake. I believe Michael had made a very good point earlier. Well, if you guys went in C3, permit by right wouldn't be going through the binding elements, would still have the same release rates, different watershed. This site currently is zoned C1. Permitted uses would include a quick service restaurant that could then have 65 without a drive-through. That could generate 2,252 trips a day compared to our 83. While it is more likely for there to be a rundown vehicle at a 83 to 2,300, there's also still a chance for that to occur there. However, at a quick service restaurant, you're not going to have anyone who's trained. You're not going to have any spill pads, and you're not going to have the same binding elements for a water quality device. And that's how we're trying to go above and beyond for the purpose of this zoning change, which is what we are proposing.
All right, thank you. All right, the opposition, would you like to make, allow 10 minutes for opposition final statement? I think you could have one more rebuttal, but I think we're just repeating ourselves at this point.
Well, it seems like we keep redirecting the conversation away from what the main topic is, C1 versus C2. We keep talking about, Mr. Talbot keeps talking about good paying jobs. Does that good paying job have to be above Crystal Lake? I think several of you are asking that question. It could be across the street. It could be behind Walgreens. It could be on Commerce Parkway. There's a lot of places that are zoned C2 or C3. Why Crystal Lake? So that argument to me is not an argument at all. We'd love to see more high-paying jobs. We welcome Christian Brothers to the neighborhood, to Oldham County. We think it's a fine, outstanding operation from what we can tell. Just don't put it in a place that was appropriately zoned C1. Ms. Sabell just threw out a number that I'm not even sure where it came from. 2,252 daily uses for a C1 zoned restaurant. Now again, C1 restaurant cannot have a drive-through. Can you imagine a restaurant that would fit in that size lot with parking that's going to generate 2,252 daily, I don't know if that was cars or customers? I believe that number, I'm not even sure where it comes from, but it absolutely would not be true for a lot that size. Some of you have asked the question, have they looked at more appropriate sites? And the answer we kind of got from the Planning Commission was no. They just saw a good deal and focused their attention straight away at this particular site. There are plenty of more appropriate sites in Oldham County that could accommodate this business. Again, I look at some of the testimony where in the past they haven't really talked about it today. Maybe they've kind of changed the tune, but this is an appointment-driven business. This is not an auto shop like O'Reilly's where you go in and get a battery or some spark plugs or something like that. If you need a service, you're going to make an appointment to go to that facility. So the question then becomes, why do they need to be in a high traffic, high visibility area? I could drive across the street and go to Big O Tires or Ken Towery. I prefer to take my car over to Kevin Cronin. It's a mile and a half away. Why? Because I know I'm going to get good service. I think that's what most of us would do, right? We like to take our vehicles and know that they're going to be serviced appropriately. Again, the argument came up today now again versus at the Planning Commission meeting. Well, the neighbors, we could be doing lawnmower maintenance and stuff like that in our yards. Well, look at the elevation if you live along the lake. Flat. Look at the elevation of what they're doing and where that runoff goes into the lake. And that just seems to be a distraction technique again, folks. Do you think that we're intentionally putting, oil and, those types of things from our lawnmowers into the lake? I think our neighbors are a little more concerned than those types of arguments. If one person's doing it, well, then anybody can do it. If there's a little pollution coming here, we're just going to add a little bit. It's low risk, but, we're just adding to it. These seems like arguments that really should be disregarded. I think there was another question, and I haven't heard it come up, but I believe there have been other businesses that have looked at this site. And for whatever reason, deals haven't gone through. But I think, like what's already there. You look at dentist offices and things like that. That's more appropriate for that site. The other thing I've got noted here is that I guess if you approve this, then you get into some of the next conversations, such as the easement variances. Right now, the rule is that it has to have a 35-foot variance that I believe is going to change to 10 feet. That hasn't come up yet, but after you approve After you approve the zoning, now you're going to get to the next element of this, which is, hey, that variance, we want to take it all the way from 35 down to 10. And oh, by the way, next to the property of O'Reilly's, we want to reduce that from, I believe it's 10 to 4.5 feet. I don't have my notes right in front of me here. You're going to be getting into some other discussions that I think would have been more appropriate to have in advance versus after the fact that when you make this, this vote. And again, Mr. Talbot continues to, I feel, challenge me that we must be doing water testing because there's a problem. I can just assure you folks, having been doing this for many years, we're doing it to be proactive. We want to make sure if there is an issue, we're identifying it and correcting it immediately so that if there's any sort of pollution coming in the lake, that it is being dealt with. It is not because we have a problem. It's to avoid problems from occurring. Last comment, yeah. All it takes is one event. As I mentioned, within the last 10 years, we've had a day where literally, I believe it was, I kind of looked at Kevin because I know he keeps track of Mr. Jeffries here, how much water rainfall happens at his property. And I believe it was over 4 inches that we had in one morning just here in the last 10 years. Their systems would not be able to accommodate. If you call that a once in a century, well, it's happened just recently. It would not be able to accommodate the amount of rain coming in that short a period. I just encourage you folks to join the Crystal Lake neighbors in opposing this zoning change. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, at this point, that'll close the, let's say, public hearing. We'll go to the court now. We have before us an ordinance relating to a change in the Oldham County zoning map, rezoning 1.066 acre tract of land located at 2107 South Highway 53 LaGrange from the existing C1 local business district to C2 community business district zoning classification. We can get this on the floor to talk about it. Is there a motion that we accept or reject this change? Magistrate Jeffries.
Yes, sir. I would like to move to deny ordinance number KOC 24-920402, the zoning change from C1 to C2, because there has not been social, economic changes in that quadrant in since the approval of the last comprehensive plan update, which was 4 years ago.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that the application for the zoning change be denied. Is there a discussion on the court? Magistrate Hawkins.
I wanted to talk to Magistrate Tice when we were talking about, he brought up the difference between C1 and C2 and C3. And I did bring it up. C1 has like what somebody had already mentioned, mostly what's there is offices. Whereas if you change to C2 or C3, then you have the ability to add things like car washes and vehicle repair shops. And let me ask a question to our engineer, if that's okay, Judge. Once it's, and maybe this is more appropriate to Jim Urban, but once it's changed to C2, if the business should close for whatever reason, does it remain C2?
It's the Jim's. Director of Planning and Development Services. When a zoning map amendment is done, and then the Planning Commission reviewed the development plan, which you're not going to consider today because that was done by the Planning Commission, there is always a standard binding element that says that it only applies to the plan that was submitted and approved on that date. So if this land use were to go away, they could continue to be out of repair, but it couldn't be used for any other land use.
It could not be.
It could not. Not without coming back before the Planning Commission for a review of the development plan.
And I don't know if we had clarification, there was a question brought up about pervious versus impervious. Was
I'm
that?
pretty sure it meets the standard. We reviewed that in the technical review committee, and it meets the, it does not exceed the maximum impervious area.
Okay, which was, do you remember what that was?
65%.
65, okay. So it's 35 impervious. 35
Well,
pervious.
that's the maximum. I mean, it's,
Okay.
I don't know what the number is. We can look that up. I don't have it in my head, but it did not exceed the maximum impervious area of 65%.
Gotcha, okay. That map that was shown from, with the red line that Mr. Anderson put up, was that, would you be able to verify that? Is that really that close as it was presented to where it comes into the cove that was, where the houses were around it?
I think the line was correct, but without a scale, it's visual, so.
Okay. And would you say that that's the way that that runoff flows in that area?
I think the runoff path was represented correctly.
Okay.
But again, without a scale, it could be
You just don't know the
hundreds
distance?
of feet, could be.
Okay. My last question is, there seemed to be more people at the last hearing in December around this, and would you be able to have an estimation about how many people you think that you would represent in your area?
I think that's hearsay
speculative?
evidence. We can't admit. You can't
Okay,
make that.
I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
a broad stroke. That was all of my statements for the court.
Manager Tice.
I'd like to follow up on one thing that Magistrate Hawkins brought up in Jim's reply to it. It's not supposed to have any other use other than the approved zoning development plan, exactly. We already have one example in Buckner where that's happened to us, and it's in existence today where what was approved is not what's on the property. So even though we can quote what the rule is, we can state and show one example differentiating from that.
Magistrate Likens.
Thank you, Judge. I would reiterate that we don't grant a zoning change to an entity such as Christian Brothers. We grant a zoning change. It doesn't mean that next week it couldn't be Eldridge's car repair shop. If we change this to the zoning for them, it doesn't mean that they will always have to be there. Someone else could build the same kind of business. So just want to clarify that. And the thing that's glaring to me on this whole situation is that somebody prepared a comprehensive zoning plan, and as you drive down Highway 53, everything on one side is C1, everything on the other side is C3. What's the reason for that? It's probably because we didn't want to approve businesses that could potentially pollute Crystal Lake. So I'd like to throw that into the mix. Thank you.
All right, any further comments? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Move voice roll.
No, sir. Call the roll. Call the roll.
Okay. Magistrate Tice.
Yes.
Magistrate-
Well, we're voting to
We read the
deny.
motion.
Remember
That's,
that, right?
my vote is yes for the motion.
Motion to deny.
To deny. That's what we are. Yes is to deny. Okay.
Did we ever have a second?
I
Yes, it
Yes,
did.
Tice.
Okay.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. Magistrate Jeffries.
Yes.
Magistrate Woosley.
Yes.
Magistrate Likens.
Yes.
Magistrate Logston.
No.
Magistrate Dye.
Yes.
Magistrate Hawkins.
Yes.
Magistrate Hounds.
No.
Judge Vogel.
Yes. Motion fails, or motion to deny is 7-2 in favor of denial. Before I'd like to address something to Mr. Green, who's come here from Texas, and Mr. Talbot, and a lady from Michigan as well. Your business is welcome here. Okay, you know from the Planning Commission that this was a sticky wicket, okay? It just happens that in the next row behind you is Mr. David Bazandis. He is our Economic Development Director in Oldham County. He knows virtually every piece of property in this county that might be within your budget and within, I'm not trying to say that we didn't, this was just one that where people are concerned about, and maybe it's a false concern. Mr. Talbot did an excellent job of trying to defeat the arguments, but there's an emotional circumstance here about the people that live there. You know, if something blew up, the rest of us would still be here who voted no on this. But Mr. Bezanis can take you. I'm off the top of my head right now. I can think of a 2-acre site within 1 mile of there that has 1,600 employees who work right across the street, who could come and drop their cars and walk to work and be there in 2 minutes. I'm not saying it's a 2-acre site in Oldham Reserve. He knows which one it is. It may not be exactly perfect, but we have something here for you. We want you. Don't take this as a rejection or something that is not for your. I've been by your business. It's a great looking business, successful looking, clean, appealing business. It's just that you're above a lake here that's scaring people. And that's, I hope you can understand that and explain it when you get back to Houston or wherever you're going. But that is the issue. Not that you're not wanted here. Believe me, you are wanted here. So thank you all very much for coming.
Judge, can we take
We'll take a 10-minute break now. Okay, please. Motion to adjourn.
Keeps everybody on their
Magistrate?
toes.
All right, is there a motion that we go back into session, please?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. We're back, and now we're going to be at the Becky Zuckline for Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant. I got it.
Conservation, yes.
I can read it
Thank
when
you,
I look
Judge.
at it. Okay, thank you.
Becky Zockline, Oldham County Solid Waste and Recycling Coordinator.
Is there an echo in here?
Thank you.
Just said your name. All right.
I'm coming before the fiscal court today, asking you to, for a motion to allow the judge to sign a grant application for an opportunity of the amount that I've been given by the Department of Energy representative was $77,210, which would be used for some sort of energy efficiency project. We have quite a few in our hip pockets that we could pull out and easily spend this money. And this is a formula grant. It is dispersed at 100% with no match and no competition.
I'll make the
See what
motion that
motion-
the judge be allowed to
Second.
sign all grant applications.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now bid award for the Wendell Moore parking lot construction. Jim Silliman.
Thank you. At the last fiscal court meeting, you opened bids for an additional parking lot to be constructed at the Wendell Moore Park. It's going to be located about where the first green of the disc golf area is. They'll relocate that, but the parking is to serve the Youth Football Association. You received 8 bids, so it's very competitive. Libs Paving was the low responsible bid at $164,422. The budget that the Parks Department had put in for this project in the fiscal year 24 budget was $235,000, so it's well within that budget amount. So I'm requesting fiscal court award this contract to Libs Paving in that amount.
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion on this? Magistrate Woosley.
I just want to comment that this did come through the Parks Committee this morning. Works better when it's turned on. This did come through the Parks Committee this morning and received a favorable vote to press forward to fiscal court today.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is the soccer complex stormwater detention basin construction. Jim.
Yes, and so this one's for the construction of a detention basin at the Buckner Soccer Complex. We received 7 bids on this one. The low bid at that time, the apparent result was $173,124.33, and that was Kiefer's Contracting and Excavating. After review of the bids, we observed that there was an item in there that had been removed by addendum. I spoke with the low bidder, and they said that they were agreeable to that removal of that item and all other addenda conditions. So I'm actually asking for a request in the amount of that this be awarded in the amount of $158,686.20. We've not done work with Kiefer Contracting before that I'm aware of. They're out of Bardstown, but I checked a couple references that they provided, and I would recommend we award this project.
Satisfied. All right.
What was the budget on this one, Jim?
Motion to approve.
So,
Hang on a second. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Now question.
we had budgeted $105,000, and this is actually reimbursable through Stormwater Board. It's a stormwater project, but it'll be awarded and administered through fiscal court. So we had budgeted $105,000. At their last meeting, Stormwater Board agreed to approve the project and reimburse it in the amount, actually in that higher amount that was on the apparent bid results.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Yes,
Measure die.
106, what was the new number again?
So it's 158,686.
158.
0.20.
686, 22?
20.
And they had explained that addendum thing again?
So there was a...
In 20 words or less?
There was a water quality structure for construction only that was included in the original bid, and that was included when it was a much larger project. We reduced the scale of the project and as such removed that item. They forgot to remove the price of that item.
It would have made it much simpler if you'd have said it that way. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Jim, again now on the culvert replacement projects.
Yeah, so we received bids at the last meeting also for culvert replacements. 7 bids were received. Louisville Paving was the low responsible bidder at $157,746. The budget for the road improvements that this comes out of is actually $300,000 through the road department. I think because of the shallowness of the culverts that we're going to have replaced, Louisville Paving was able to bid very competitively. And as such, I'd like to recommend fiscal court award this bid to Louisville Paving.
And Judge, this came through road committee this morning, and we voted to approve it. So I'd like to move that we approve the low bid of Louisville Paving of $157,746.
That was the top.
Is there a second? Second. All right, any discussion on this? Magistrate Dye?
Where are they, I've forgotten.
So there were three on Maple Drive, one on Running Brook, and that one's actually, we're able to provide materials to them because the road department has spare box culverts. They're just performing the labor and providing equipment. There was a small one on Forest Park Drive. So there's 5 or 6 various culverts being replaced of 36, 42 inch or greater.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now Belinda will have a consulting services agreement to discuss.
Hello. This is an agreement with AECom to provide preliminary design services for the Mattingly Old LaGrange Road Trail project in the amount of $98,458. This trail segment will connect with the new section of trail that was built as part of the Commerce Parkway Extension project at Mattingly Lane, and then it's going to go south towards I-71 along Old LaGrange Road to connect with the existing pedestrian bridge over I-71 at exit 18. And then it will also extend north from the intersection with Mattingly Road along Old LaGrange Road to the intersection with Kentucky 146.
Okay.
Fiscal Court approved federal funding for this project last October, and we are asking Fiscal Court to approve Judge Vogel's signature on the agreement.
Judge, I make a motion, we authorize you to sign the agreement with AECom for the Mattingly Old LaGrange Road Consulting Services Agreement.
All right.
All right, second. Is this going to go up along the road? I'd like to see where this is going to go. Right.
I don't know how to turn it on, I'll be honest.
Okay.
And how many years have you been here again?
It's changed. The overhead has changed.
The guy behind the curtain does that.
Yeah.
Judge, just while she's doing that, this is, the purpose of the consultants is to determine the actual alignment where it goes. There on Mattingly, there are utility poles and drainage structures, and along Old LaGrange Road, we don't know whether it's going to go on the west or the east side of Old LaGrange Road. So this is to determine its path.
How did you?
Push it to the left just a little bit so it's not in a crack, and push it up. Push it up. Push it up.
Jim, how did we get to AECom? How was that determined?
They are on state consulting services, and they just picked the next one in line. So
Who's they? Who picked it?
The Transportation Cabinet, because this is using KIPTA funds, and so the cabinet, we just use their
Consultant?
consultant.
Okay, we had nothing, you and I had nothing to do with.
That's correct.
AECom, okay.
So if you can see this okay, I don't have an aerial that shows this whole area with the new Commerce Parkway extension built. So So here's where it starts roughly, and it runs to there, and that's where the new road ends. So it's gonna go this way to Kentucky 146, and then it's gonna go this way, all the way to the Pet Bridge.
Okay.
So that we can get everybody across the interstate.
Okay.
And what's our exposure for this?
For this agreement, our exposure is $19,692. And we have $78,766 in federal funds.
I'm sorry, what was number 19?
$19,692.
Judge, could I ask?
Yes,
Chris, as our finance committee chair, is that already budgeted?
I'm pretty sure it's in the budget. I
It's in the
remember
budget.
looking it up the other day.
Yes. Okay.
I don't remember the amount, but I know there was a project in
Because
there.
this is only a portion of what was approved for design, because this is preliminary design. We'll have additional design where they actually put together the plans a little later. So in the budget, we have, I think it was $199,800 federal and $49,950 local match
For design.
for the complete design phase.
And this is one of the conversations that Mr. Herbert and I've had in the past. Like to see the amount for the budget, not for the project necessarily, because obviously the amount that you spoke of is quite a bit higher than the 19,000. We know we're not going to get all the design done in 1 year.
Understood, but the instruction we get when we're putting the capital budget together is put in all of the project phases and the cost of those phases. So in creating this next one, if that's what you want, you need to tell us specifically, because that's not typically what we do. We put in all the capital projects and all of our local share. So this
Understood.
is a portion of that, so
Understand.
essentially over the next 2 years, we'll
We're just overstating the budget by putting in the additional funds, but that's
Sure.
different date, different conversation.
I have a question, Judge.
Measure die.
Since y'all going on around the corner up there, I'm assuming when they start putting in the under the railroad tracks at Allen Lane and 393, will they design something to latch into what you're doing?
Yes, yeah. All of this, including this project, are part of the overall Oldham County Greenway Trail, and both 393 and Allen Lane have well, I know 393 has a 10-foot wide shared use path. I'm pretty sure it's at least a sidewalk, if not a shared use path, 10-foot wide shared use path on Allen Lane. I think it's on the east side. Yeah. So yes, they're all connecting to that Oldham County Greenway Trail.
Since Allen Lane is going directly onto, right across the bridge, it seemed like it should be reversed. On the, how wide is the all-purpose path?
10 foot.
But a sidewalk is,
Usually 5, a minimum of 5, sometimes
if you had
6.
your druthers, if I had my druthers, I'd switch them because of the way that Allen Lane comes right off Ernie Harris across the bridge and then.
Well, but there's already a 10-foot wide shared use path on Commerce Parkway, and there is a shared use path on the Ernie Harris Bridge or Dampier Bridge, and it is a federal requirement that we have shared use path. It isn't a local decision on sidewalk. When you're using federal dollars, you have to go multimodal. And
Yeah,
so
they can be.
Yep. And that's part of the good news is on Allen Lane, we're not paying any further costs on that. We have a little bit of design left because the CSX had some modifications. But after that, the right-of-way's already been purchased, the utilities and the construction phase, we don't pay anything for Allen Lane.
So when's that starting?
They're going to put it out for bid at, the schedule is at the end of this year for Allen Lane.
How long will it take?
Well, that's a long project. 2 years probably because they have to build a temporary runaround track for the railroad.
Yeah.
And utilities are really taken care of in the construction phase, so Allen Lane should be 2 years.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Everything's 2 years. Maybe we can have Allen Lane done and
US 42.
yeah,
I was thinking about the
42
courthouse.
done and the courthouse done and 146, 393, all finished in 2 years.
Yeah.
That means it's going to be longer.
On the same day.
Okay. On the same day.
Magistrate Tice.
And I'm not sure whether we'll see this again, but there's one caution that just goes through my mind, and that's where on the shared path as it gets up to the old LaGrange Road, where what used to be quick and greasy, that crossover is dangerous. There's a lot of us that use that crossover to avoid the school opening and closings because it becomes a traffic jam. But whoever does that, there's a little bend in the railroad tracks there, and if anybody's crossed it, I don't have to go very exaggerate. It's really dangerous. So if we got people out there walking, we need to make sure that all precautions are taken.
Yeah, and in the development of the scope of work for these consultants, we talked about that, trying to separate the pedestrians at that location because it rises steeply. It doesn't meet ADA requirements. It's also dangerous because it curves. You're kind of in a curve on the railroad track itself, plus the railroad. So their job is to try to find an alternative.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion on this? We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're at the Economic Development Committee and some transfer property. Jim Silliman.
You already know about it. Okay.
Bear with me, I just need to load a presentation in real quick.
Okay.
I don't think you want to see the Centerfield Drive speed limit one again.
Oh, that would be great.
Been there, done that.
That's right.
Got the T-shirt. And the trophy.
All right, so speaking of Commerce Parkway, there's a piece of property that we're requesting be transferred. It's in association with the Wawa development, proposed Wawa development, but it's not being transferred to Wawa. So if we look, again, you saw where Commerce Parkway was realigned on or extended on the previous presentation. This is an old, relatively old photo, aerial photo, but the new alignment roughly goes this direction. There was, at the time of 393 being aligned, realigned where it is today, this property, this 2812, that was owned by a property owner other than this larger area, which is, I'll look up the name in a moment. So to provide access to them so they wouldn't be landlocked, this stub and this little driveway was constructed as part of this 393 construction, and it was kept as KYTC right-of-way. And then, so this is just the right-of-way plan from our Commerce Parkway extension plans. This is that right-of-way that extended down to provide access to this landlocked property. There's a split in the right-of-way from KYTC property to Oldham County property at this line. And so there's a little triangle. There are triangles for both the radii of that entrance. And the developer has sold this previously landlocked property has been sold to Oldham County Industrial Park. So now it's one big property. And this access is not required. It falls on kind of in the middle of the proposed Wawa development. So the current property owner is coordinating with KYTC to have this larger access area transferred to them. At the same time, we would, and this just shows where that area lies on their proposed development plan. So we have this little corner that we need to do the same thing with. So I spoke with the county attorney, Barry Baxter, and he found this KRS 67.0802 that indicates the county can dispose of this property. It says the county shall make a written determination setting forth and fully describing. So the current owner or the entity that we are planning to give the property to has provided a legal description and a survey to facilitate that deed transfer. In just answering all these questions, the real property is that radius corner. The intended use is for the future development. the reason why it's in the public interest to dispose, and basically the property benefits development plans of adjoining parcel and is combined with larger state parcel in the process of being similarly released, and the subject parcel serves no purpose to the public as is. And this states that, this KRS states that it can be transferred without compensation for economic development purposes, which shall include but not limited to the real property transfers for elimination of blight. So because it mentions economic development specifically, we did take this to the Economic Development Committee at their last meeting, who agreed to this proposal. This is the survey that was provided showing this small tract. It's less than 500 square feet for this little triangle that Oldham County is, or that I'm requesting Oldham County transfer. And that's the legal description that we would include in the transfer document. So again, I'm requesting fiscal court approve transfer of this approximately 500 square foot triangular parcel to Oldham County Industrial Park, LLC.
Magistrate Tice? You reckon?
I had met with Jim, and that's the only part, just that little triangle on that, what I'll look like on our left side as we're looking at it on our screens. The right side has already been taken care of. That's not even part of our concern.
It's in the process of being taken care of.
All
but
of
you're
that's being
correct.
taken care of with the state on the what would have been the stub road.
That is correct.
Yeah, and for that reason, I'd like to make the motion that we approve this.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we transfer this small piece of property to the Oldham County Industrial
Park
Authority?
LLC.
Pardon?
Oldham County Industrial Park LLC.
Okay, LLC, all right. Magistrate Hawkins.
Jim, you mentioned without compensation, and I'd like to just make the statement that in economic development, what swayed me to be agreeable to vote to take this to the fiscal court here today is that that entity that you just mentioned was the original owner, and they allowed us to use it to be able to have access back to when we were building Commerce, right?
That's correct. They donated this and the much larger right-of-way area for Commerce to be extended in the first place.
So
It's being transferred back to them because we
Yep.
no longer need it.
Okay.
It's a very good point.
All right, any further discussion? We've got a motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're at the personnel actions here, and Tina, would you like to discuss those?
Before you all this afternoon are two new hires, one for the police department. We have an admin, Tina LaFever, at admin one, $20 an hour, effective on the 28th of February. And the other one is the road department, a new hire, Donnie Zeitz, as equipment operator one at $18 an hour, effective on the 21st, tomorrow.
We have a motion that we hire these two new individuals.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Now we have an appointment to the Sheriff's Merit Board, and I'd like to appoint, everybody knows, Jerry Nart to the Sheriff Merit Board for a term to expire February 20th, 2026. I think everybody here knows Jerry, and he's a very capable, qualified individual, and Sheriff Wakefield's happy to have him on the board as well. So I'll make that motion to appoint Jerry Nart to the Sheriff Merit Board. All right, we got a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Unless, is there anybody here who wants to make a public comment at this point? Don't see anyone, so I'll close public comment. And we'll kind of wind up our meeting with a final few words from magistrates, and guess we'll start with Magistrate Likens.
Thank you, Judge. I'll see most of you up at the Legislative Training Day tomorrow in Frankfurt. So looking forward to that. It's always a good time.
Right. Magistrate Tice.
Nothing today, Judge. Thank you.
Magistrate Woosley.
Just a few, Judge. This past weekend, the KHSAA had their state wrestling championship, and I want to recognize two state championships from Oldham County. Miller Brown won the boys state championship in his weight class, and Tatum Malay won the girls state championship in her weight class. Those both from Oldham County High School. On March 16th, the Oldham County Parks is putting on a whodunit, a mystery dinner theater at the John Black Center. You can register online, and it's $120 per couple. Also want to recognize Fred Smith, who passed away this week. Fred was 97 years old, lived here in Oldham County, and was the former LaGrange Utilities Director for many years. And finally, one of our own employees, Ryan Fisher, who still is in the room with us. Earlier this year, he went on a mission trip to Nicaragua for Amigos with Christ. While he was there, they ran some clean water lines, they renovated some bathrooms, and did some educational opportunities. And I just think when we have county employees that do stuff like that, they need to be recognized. So I just wanted to thank him for representing Oldham County.
Right.
That's all I have, Judge.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, Magistrate Jeffries.
Yes, just a couple things, or three things here. Just want to thank the Oldham County SRO officers for keeping our school staff and children safe. Last week, we celebrated the SRO Appreciation Day. So I just want to publicly thank those officers. They do an outstanding job. I think they have a good rapport, with the teachers and the students, and so I just want to publicly thank them for the job that they do. I'd also like to announce February 17th through the 24th is National FFA Week. The focus of National FFA Week is to tell the community and the country about the great opportunities available through FFA. And then the third item is the Oldham County Conservation District tree giveaway is scheduled for March 2nd from 9 to 12 at the Oldham County History Center. And the district has about 2,500 trees that are available, and you can get 10 trees per household. But I would suggest that you try to get there early because they run out of trees pretty quick. But that's all I have, Judge.
All right, thank you. Magistrate Hounds.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Judge. Last week I was able to tour the old open range that we bought to move the police department to. And just wanted to let the court and others know, the day I was there, the sheriff's department was there, qualifying with their new weapons, and the police department was there also qualifying new officers. So we've only had the property for a short amount of time. It's already getting used by our law enforcement group. The cake cutting celebration, I don't know what the correct term is, that we had the other day. Kudos to the judge and others that put that on. That was a neat ceremony, and it seems like a lot of people enjoyed it. Tomorrow, as Magistrate Likens spoke, is the County Officials Legislators Day. We've got a full plate. Those of you that are going, they would like us there by no later than 8 o'clock. And I've got already Senator Tishner, the Speaker Osborne, Representative Nemus, Representative Fleming, and we're also going to go visit the Attorney General since he's in Oldham County, and I feel like we should at least stop by and say hello to him. And I've got all that stuff built out on our agenda for tomorrow.
Okay, good. All right, Magistrate Hawkins.
Nothing today, Judge. Thank you.
All right. Magistrate Dye.
Magistrate Hound, since you seem to be the court party planner.
No. That's
just
Judge Vogel's guy.
Just want to let you know that was called a birthday party with cake.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the judge forgot the ice cream.
It was cold enough. I don't think ice cream was necessary.
I'm pretty sure we get the sheriff go over and take a search warrant with him. He'll get that ice cream over at Judge Vogel's house. So that's all, Judge.
Magistrate Logston.
Yes, sir. For some important matters, the corner of 390 or 329 and 329 where they come together, it's very dangerous right there right now. They've blasted the rock up, and you have sometimes 4 dump trucks backing up, filling up with rock. The dust is flying everywhere. What's happened to me twice, once last week, once this week. The trucks are lined up, and they're facing going towards 71. So they're looking at their mirrors in a curve to see if there's any traffic coming. I was stopped twice now with dust flying and cars stopping in front of you because the trucks are pulling out at 5 miles an hour. They're so loaded, and people go around that curve, supposedly 35. So just please be careful there. It's the dust is awful sometimes. You can't see. So just please be careful when you're coming through there.
Judge, if that's the case, I've seen it to us, that maybe we need to talk to someone over there, since I'm chairman of public safety, and we get an officer to go down there and work
Be
something
nice
out.
if we had somebody there. I don't know if the sheriff or police can.
Let's talk to the
somebody down there.
contractor and see how, what would be the best way to. They know when the trucks are there. They know what they need more than we do.
Right,
And
I
the
know.
officers can
It's
take care of it.
looking. I went by there this morning, and it's starting to take that wall down. It's going to be a lot safer in the long run, but it's got some risk involved right there now. So it's a good idea.
So, you're going to take care of that for us?
Yes, I try to. We on March 19th here, I want everybody to make the note in your calendars. On March 19th at 12:30, preferably in the parking lot, but if it's raining, we'll have it in this room here. Our closeout for the AT&T contract. They're coming down to the final few houses in the county that are still to be wired with high-speed access. But we're going to close that out on March 19th at 12:30 here at the Fiscal Court Building. We're going to have a good celebration with AT&T, and believe it or not, we are only the second county in the entire United States that AT&T has wired completely from one end to the other. So they're very proud of their work here, and we're very proud to have this in Kentucky. I believe that we are the very first county in Kentucky to have everyone in the county have access to broadband services. And some people may already have it, but don't realize that they can increase their speeds. You may be getting something, you need to contact AT&T if they haven't contacted you, and you might go up to 100 or 300 or 500 gigabytes or megabytes. Whatever it is, you can get a lot faster speed if you want it. So even if you may have had it previously, maybe you're not aware of it. I'm one that is satisfied with my AT&T, but actually have the ability to do a lot more than I'm doing, and didn't realize it till they brought me up to date. Okay, I believe that's it for today. I've been looking at that clock all day, and it hasn't. Will be fixed by maintenance. So hopefully tomorrow it hasn't moved 1 minute since we started at 2, and it's now 5:20. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.